And before I do, I want to ask the town manager to please read the disclosures and the protocols.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you just heard, this meeting is being recorded, so we will post it on the town's YouTube channel and the website after it's concluded. Just a reminder to folks that there will be public comment periods at certain points, but otherwise, if you could please mute your microphone and turn off your camera, that would be great. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, the chat function works so that you can send a message to me directly. And if you'd like, you can indicate that you wish to make a comment, or alternatively, you can use the raise hand function. If for whatever reason this meeting does get interrupted, we'll cut it off and send out new information on how to log in and rejoin. And then I forgot to mention, if you do wish to make a comment, just please state your name and address for the public record. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
And I do want to reiterate what the town manager said about blocking your videos. We've had a number of complaints from residents that it's very distracting, especially when people are watching and doing multiple activities. So we would greatly appreciate that. And if you have any questions or comments, as Matt said, the chat is disabled, but you can directly communicate with him. So we really appreciate it. So with that, I would like to call the public comment period. If anyone, any resident or guest has a question or comment, if you could either raise your hand or and the town manager will call on you.
Yes, we do have one resident who has indicated that they would like to speak. Amalia Levitin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I
remember to tell us your name and your street.
Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Amalia and I live on Trent. So I, as some of you may know, have started a petition to lower the voting age in Somerset from 18 down to 16. And I would like the town council to recognize this petition and hopefully introduce some legislation that does make the change.
Okay, well, thank you, Amalia, for not only engaging young people in the town, also serving on the Equity and Inclusion Committee. The council and I greatly appreciate it. And I believe that I'll let the council president respond to what will the process be to receive the, have you already sent the petition? So what the process is, it would be up to the council president to schedule that as an agenda item on a work session, but I'll let him respond.
Right, that's it exactly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the petition. It's great to get feedback and comments from residents of all ages. And I think that's the process. The council will discuss it at the work session coming up later this month. And then I imagine that we'll slot it into regular council meeting agenda for approval in the near future.
And then there will be a great deal of opportunity for information to continue to be circulated and for public comment.
Absolutely.
So as I said, and I think everybody knows that I support this proposal, but it does have to go through a legislative process. And I appreciate the leadership of Amalia on this. And so thank you. Thank you, Amalia, for being here tonight. Mr. Town Manager, has anyone else?
I don't believe so at this time.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? I saw Councilmember Heller first, and I think the President second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. I think it was unanimous. The next item is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion? I see President Circo. Is there a second? I see Councilmember Barr. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That was unanimous. Now we will go to a public hearing to consider a building permit application submitted by Chris Conlon of CM Conlon Contractors and Builders for the demolition and construction of a new single-family home at the property located at 5506 Trent Street. And so now we will begin the hearing. Today is March 7th, 2022. This is a continuation of the hearing for a permit application submitted by Chris Conlon of CM Contractors and Builders Incorporated for the demolition and construction of the single-family home at the property located at 5506 Trent Street. The applicant has amended his previous application and rescinded all variance applications. This hearing is being recorded. We ask that all speakers speak one at a time, addressing the council when called upon, and to state name and address for the record before making a public comment. The hearing will observe the following order. The Somerset Town staff will present updated findings and submit for the record a report on the application under consideration. Next, the applicant will present their application and/or comment on the report. Next, other interested parties will have the opportunity to ask, next, the Somerset Town Council will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff relevant to the application. Next, other interested parties will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or present comments to the council. Then, if necessary, the applicant will have the opportunity for rebuttal testimony. That would be in order to rebut any comment or question that someone asks in the public hearing. And then after that time, the public comment period will be completed and the record closed. Then following that, the council will deliberate and discuss among themselves the merits of the case, the findings of fact, and conclusion. The council may make a motion on a permit decision. If necessary, the town attorney will be asked to write a decision and the town manager will be asked to issue a permit with the conditions voted on by the council enumerated in the town attorney's decision. So we'll now begin the hearing with the presentation of the staff findings and reports. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you will recall, at the February 7th council meeting, the council unanimously voted to continue the building application and variance hearing and asked that the applicant come back with a proposal that satisfies the code or presents a more persuasive argument as to why a variance is necessary. The applicant subsequently emailed the town on February 10th to get feedback on a preliminary design plan to install underground rain tanks or cisterns on the property, which would store 5,100 gallons of rooftop drainage. After consultation with the town engineering consultant and town attorney, I agreed that the proposal satisfied the requirements of the town code on the following grounds. One, the proposed 5,100 gallons stored by the proposed underground cisterns is greater than the total rooftop runoff of the proposed new building, which equals 4,877 gallons. Number two, the town code requires storage for all runoff from all rooftop surfaces and expressly lists cisterns and rain tanks as acceptable storage devices. 3, the town code does not require on-site infiltration. And 4, the proposal treats runoff by storing it in the cisterns and pumping it slowly into a gravel bed. And the gravel bed further slows down runoff, thus reducing volume during a storm event. I informed the applicant that they must notify neighbors of the proposed changes, and the applicant did so between February 14th and 19th. The applicant also submitted a letter revoking their variance application and amending their building permit application with the stormwater management plan that is included for the council. I also note that the applicant is proposing to install a permeable driveway in compliance with the Somerset code. The applicant's original application was approved by Montgomery County in December of 2021. The plan indicated that the request of a waiver of the stormwater management that will require fees associated with this waiver to be paid to Montgomery County. The county issued the sediment control permit and indicated ESD to the MEP, which in essence means that no stormwater measures were required, and exempting the applicant from stormwater management requires at the county level. Because the applicant was approved without a stormwater management plan, revisions weren't necessary at the county level either. So therefore, the council can take action on the proposal that is before you tonight. And I noted for the council that as of Thursday, the town had not received any additional comments from those that were submitted at the last hearing, but updated that over the weekend, the town did receive four comments. 2 objected to the removal of the town cherry trees at the front of the property. 1 expressed concerns over protection of neighbors' 3 trees, and 1 which thanked the council in general for their careful consideration of this building permit application. And the town engineering consultant, Doug Lohmeyer, has more detailed analysis. And so with that, I will turn it over to Doug.
Good evening. Matt did a great job of recapping of where we are today. A few things to add to that. The new plans indicate that all of the roof downspouts will be piped to 3 underground rain tanks that are located in the left front yard of the house. The applicant proposes to collect the 1-year storm event from the proposed house roof downspouts and convey the runoff to the 3 underground rain tanks in the left front corner of the lot. The applicant's engineer has determined that the proposed roof runoff for the 1-year storm event will generate 4,877 gallons. The proposed rain tanks have a combined capacity of 5,100 gallons, which is 223 gallons above the roof runoff. Plan indicates the rain tanks will do the water within 48 hours. Section 112-14 of the town code states, storage must be provided for a 1-year storm event in a device such as a dry well, rain tank, cistern, green roofs, or other devices approved by the council. The Maryland Department of Environment's 5.0 manual includes rain harvest cisterns and rain barrels, and provides guidelines for underground rain storage tanks. The manual states the following: rainwater harvesting can be applied on residential, commercial, municipal, and industrial sites. Space limitations can be overcome if storage is provided in the roof or underground. For underground tanks or cisterns, a pump, pressure tank, and backflow preventer will be needed. A stable discharge shall be provided to pervious areas for any necessary dewatering event between storm events. Figure 5.9 in the manual indicates that the flow can be directed to a French drain gravel trench. Privately owned practices shall have a maintenance plan and shall be protected by easements, deeds, restrictions, ordinance, or other legal measures preventing neglect, adverse alterations, or removal. More facts about the rain tank that they're proposing. The rain tank product includes a 1.25 horsepower internal pump, which will be used to slowly dewater the rain tanks after the rain event ends. The rain tanks have a flotation device similar to a flotation device in a sump pump that will automatically turn on in the tank when the tank is at capacity. The pump also has a control panel that can manually start the pumps and will regulate the rate of dewatering flow from the tanks. The pump is connected to a 1-inch diameter pipe that will convey the storage runoff to a 6-inch diameter perforated pipe in a French drain trench running parallel to the front lot line and within the lot. The French drain trench will be filled with gravel and it will be 12 feet long, 1 feet wide, and 2 feet deep. As the water enters the French drain trench, a portion may infiltrate into the soil, while the remainder will slowly sheet flow over the edge of the 12.5-foot long stone trench and slowly disperse through approximately 20 feet of grass shoulder in front of the lot. This will happen after the storm has ended and when most of or all of the water has stopped flowing in the curb in French Street. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, is the arborist going to
Yes,
give a-
I was going to say that our town arborist also has a tree protection and tree replacement plan that he can report on. Tolbert, I think you're here, right?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So first of all, the owner is proposing to remove the 2 street trees. They're 2 cherry trees in front. And the reason for that is the site's going to be regraded in the front. So you can't protect the trees. And also the utilities are going in the front by where the trees are. So the bond requirement is, let's see. Oh, there's 1 spruce too within the house of the footprint that's in the front, 11-inch. So there's three trees being removed. The bond requirement's $1,500. The reforestation plan is to plant two new street trees or cedar cherries, 2 to 2.5 inch caliper, and 1 canopy tree, oak, maple, or black gum, 2 to 2.5 inch caliper. The tree protection plan, there's 2 trees in back and the neighbor's trees in back that are going to be fenced for protection. And the owner and I have to get together before construction starts to figure out a way to protect the 3 trees at I think it's 5508 on the north side of the property. The roots extend out into the owner's property, and the retaining wall's going to have to be adjusted if those 3 trees aren't removed. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the staff reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Conlon, now's your opportunity if you want to elaborate on your application or comment on the staff reports. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you all considering our permit. We did take into account the comments that were made at the last meeting, and I believe we are now in 100% compliance with all of the town codes for stormwater management, tree reforestation, setbacks, So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I do have our engineer attending also tonight, if he can answer questions about the stormwater management.
For the record, can you state his name?
Shane Green.
Jane Green, Potomac Valley. Okay, thank you.
And we did manage to achieve 100%, which I was very difficult, but we have 100% of the stormwater, rooftop stormwater drainage managed on property. So again, if there's any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. Council President Circa, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Thank you very much for the updated proposal. I'm concerned about the storage on site. I understand that the cisterns will hold like 5,000 gallons. And I guess this is for Shane, the engineer. So the stormwater event creates 4,877 gallons. To pump it out in 48 hours, I calculate as 102 gallons per hour. Is that about correct?
I didn't calculate it out over the 48 hours. It's 48 hours is the maximum time that it can take to dewater those devices per the state manual.
Okay.
So they can be quicker, they can be that long.
Okay. The way I'm reading the proposal, this sounds elegant. The water enters the French drain trench and a portion may infiltrate into the soil. So the trench itself, I calculate, can hold 187 gallons out of that 4,000 plus gallons. So the rest of the water needs to infiltrate.
Well, no, it will come up out of the ground and over the grass.
Okay, so if it comes out over the ground, how is it being held on the property?
Well, it's held in the tanks and then dispersed over time.
Dispersed over 2 days? That's not held, that's just temporarily held back. So my concern is the engineer that the geotech, the company that was brought in to assess the soil, found the soil should not be used for infiltration. I can, the exact quote from their report. Let's see. Infiltration practices in this area are not considered feasible. And yet it sounds like you are proposing some measure of infiltration. And then you talk about everything else will just sheet off over the lawn into the street. Is that correct?
Well,
it's just going to go into the street?
I'm not, yes, it will go into the street. I'm not taking any credit for infiltration, but some will obviously go into the clay soil. The gravel trench there is used to spread the water out. Instead of just having a pipe pumping water out, it spreads it out over that 12 feet so that it flows more naturally over the grass.
Right, flow naturally with grass into the street. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barr.
Right. Thank you very much for your efforts here. I appreciate the solution that you have achieved. One of the points about stormwater flow is that when it rushes, as in a major storm, it does a whole lot of damage. It both sweeps up all kinds of particulates, which include metal, toxins, and so on, as well as, dog droppings, deer droppings, mouse droppings, whatever, all swept up in that, swept into the water and contaminates the water. And the rush also destroys banks when it flows in and challenges the banks and erodes the banks. So a lot of what needs to be done in managing water is to slow it down. When it's going more slowly, it drops the particulates out so that it's cleaner water that flows into the stream. When it's going more slowly, it does not destroy the banks. It just flows into the stream directly. So slowing it down is a very much part of the solution, and this is what is proposed here. So that's why I very much support this solution. One other point, if you're in terrain tanks, one of the ways you can increase harvesting of the water is if you put a filter in the tank, you can actually connect the tank to the interior plumbing of the house. So you can use the water to flush the toilets of the house in some cases. And you can also have a way to use the pump to actually irrigate the landscaping. So I'm not saying you do that this time, I'm just saying take a note of that, because those are the kinds of things that appeal to owners too. If you can save on their water bill by being able to do that kind of thing, it's sometimes a sale. Anyway, I appreciate your solution. It does work. And maintenance is key to it. And the state manual does require a maintenance plan, and that is important. I do want to talk about the trees a little bit because of one thing that Tolbert's report does say is that he needs to talk to you about how you're going to protect the neighbor's 3 cherry trees at 5508 Trent. And you seem to have said to a neighbor that you are not sure at all that you can protect the roots and that you will replace her trees as you expect to damage the roots with the driveway. Would you reconcile that for me? What is going to happen there?
So I think that's a little bit different than the conversation I had with the neighbor. I was just making sure that she knew if in the event that they were damaged, not that we believe we will practice whatever measures are recommended by the town arborist, but that in the event they were damaged, we were willing to take on the burden cost of removing and replacing them with a comparable tree.
All right, and I won't say you're confident, but you're reasonably confident that you can get the driveway in without damaging them.
Yeah, we will do everything humanly possible.
Do that. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Heller. You're muted. You're muted.
There we go. Thanks. Hi. I guess I was wondering about the clay, the layer of clay there, and how can it be so easy to deal with this water by just putting gravel on top of it? Don't we have to dig up that clay and get rid of it to make this really work? No, that's my real question here. Am I wrong? I don't know. Shane, maybe you know better than I hope.
Yeah, in this particular case, the gravel is being used to spread out the outfall from the pump. So the pump is pumping water out of those tanks. And if the pipe just came out to the ground, it would be essentially a large garden hose. But instead, it goes into this French drain that'll let the water spread out, slow down, rise to the surface, and run evenly over the grass. So instead of one concentrated flow, you'll have a much more spread out flow that won't damage the grass or cause any kind of erosion.
How deep is the clay? Do you know?
I do not know.
I don't know. Somewhere along the line, one of our meetings, I heard it was like 6 or 8 inches. Am I wrong about that, guys? Anybody know?
I can
Deeper than that.
What?
I can answer that. The soil bore test was at 5 feet to 6 feet, and it was solid clay all the way down.
I see. So digging that up is not really, that's an expensive option for you. Is that it?
It's not only expensive, it's completely impractical. You would basically dig up clay, create, even if you replaced it with a pervious soil or one that would perk, it would be a mud pit. You would never get the water to drain out of that pool you created full of new soil. I spoke with numerous engineers outside of Potomac Valley, and they said it's absolutely not an option. And I believe your town engineer, we also spoke a bit, and he said it's not a viable option.
My next question then really is about the trees. Those cherry trees are really important to our town, and our neighbors, because there are numerous neighbors that have written today on our unofficial listserv that not everybody reads, that are just crying about those trees and begging us to not let them be harmed. And I'm concerned because if me as a town resident, if I wanted to change my driveway, I'd never get away with that. I don't think I'd ever be allowed to because I might hurt the trees. And we need your best assurance that you're going to protect those trees, because that's really important to our residents.
Okay, which trees are we talking about now? The neighbor's
Cherry
tree?
trees by the driveway.
The cherry trees that are next to the driveway are actually maples. I don't believe they're cherries.
They're cherries.
The cherries that are in question are the two town trees in the front. One of the cherries in the front was sitting on top of Washington Gas's pipeline and has already been compromised. The other one would need to be removed, obviously, to get a driveway. There's no other possible way to meet the stormwater management requirements that we're trying to meet and keep the driveway where it is. The neighbor's trees, I am doing everything possible. As much as my neighbor has her property rights, I did buy an 8,300 square foot lot and I should have the right to utilize my lot. Planting of trees next to our property actually, and having the canopy and the roots are exposed on all of those trees. They need to be pruned anyway. I'm happy to meet with the town arborist, do everything humanly possible to save those trees.
Okay.
Remove
just-
a tree.
I appreciate that. And I guess this might be a little out of line, but the next time you buy a property in our town, I hope you'll build a smaller house. So we won't be having some of these conversations, because that's what really needs to happen here. The developers are coming in and building on every inch, as you are. And that's why we're here again tonight. So maybe next time you'll treat us to a smaller house.
In all honesty, the house I'm building is farther away from the property line than the house that's there.
Okay. Thank you, though. Thanks for all that you're trying to do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kumar.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt, Doug, and Tolbert, and thank you to Chris and team. And appreciate, Mr. Conlon, your efforts to try and come into compliance with our code. I have a question for Doug. Doug, you mentioned the calculations provided by the applicant's engineers. I just wanted to reaffirm with you that you have validated those calculations. For example, the generation of 4,877 gallons, your sort of opinion on the sort of ability for the system to dewater within 48 hours. In your report, you summarized, but I didn't hear clearly that you are, in your assessment, these are consistent with your own assessment of the proposal.
The first item is I did run through the numbers that Shane provided, and they do follow the Maryland Department of Environment's formula for calculating runoff. So I agree with his numbers. And for the second part, relating to the engineering issues, my opinion that the proposed plans do comply with the town code, and that the plan should be approved by the council.
Thank you, Doug. I have a question on one of the two cherry trees that are the town trees, Mr. Conlon. There is I think the 18-inch tree that is, I think, above the gas line, if I'm not mistaken from the drawings. And then there's a 22-inch, which is proximate to the proposed permeable driveway. Is there any way to make the driveway work and somehow save the older, bigger tree, the 22-inch? Presumably the one that is above the gas line is going to be difficult, but I'm wondering if it's possible to, given that you have some flexibility in your own design on where you place the permeable driveway, to try and save the 22-inch one.
I don't know that there really is, because if we go farther down, it's going to impact utilities. If we move it upgrade, it impacts the neighbor more negatively. You know, regarding the trees also, I'm more than happy, and I love the trees. I'm not trying to take trees down. I wish I could keep everything. I'm more than happy to put a higher caliber tree in there if it's available. We do have a commercial tree company that we deal with that could potentially bring in 4 to 5 or 6 inch caliber trees. Again, availability wise, if they are available, I'm more than happy to put those in.
Yeah, I think we would be more comfortable with that. And I think if there is a way to save at least one of those two, especially the more mature one, given established root systems and the fact that they are part of the sort of special tree line we have on Trent Street, and the fact, as you heard from one of my fellow council members, we've heard from our fellow residents a deep concern that these trees would be cut. If either a way to save the 22 inch in your design and or to consider planting slightly larger tree, that would be appreciated. But no more questions from my end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rovak.
Okay, I have a couple different questions for various people. So when you guys talk about the 1-year storm, what is the calculation of that measurement?
Shane, can you answer that, please?
Yeah, the 1-year storm uses 2.6 inches of rainfall, and that's from the Maryland Department of the Environment manual.
Like in a storm event, 2.6 inches. That's right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so with this what do we call it? Oh, the rain tank. So the rain tank, that's buried underground and it catches like the water and it holds it there. And then you guys pump that out over the course of 48 hours. What happens if there are multiple storm events on top of each other?
It's a 48-hour maximum time. It doesn't have to be set to use the full 48 hours. So the 48-hour maximum time is from the state manual. Any stormwater management facility is supposed to dewater within 48 hours. If there's additional rain, so the pumps will actually start just like a sump pump. As soon as those tanks fill up and hit the low water switch, it's gonna start pumping. So it'll be pumping while it's raining, and then after it's raining until it dewaters. If there's a second storm, like the next day, then it'll take whatever volume is available to it, and the rest will overflow out of the tanks at the overflow pipe adjacent to the right-of-way there. And that's similar to any infiltration practice that you have. If you have a dry well and it's full on Monday, it rains again on Tuesday, it just comes out the downspouts and overland to wherever it's headed.
And so like, then that goes out in a concentrated flow, not that sheet flow. If it does the over.
Yes, it would be a more concentrated flow, but it would be equivalent to a downspout coming out on the ground.
And that goes, where is that pointed to? The street?
To the street, yes.
What happens if like what happens if the sump pump like stops working?
Tanks would overflow out the same overflow pipe.
And is there concern that like there's just going to be like this water all underground and I guess how close would that be to the potential of the house?
It's in enclosed tanks, a plastic tank.
So they can't leak into the sides or something?
No, the water wouldn't leak out of the tanks, they'd be sealed. So if the pump wasn't working, there would be a service person come out and open the lid and pull the pump out and service it. Again, similar to a sump pump in your basement, if it failed, you would just replace the pump or have it serviced.
And then, so it says that, the rain the rain tank has a flotation device similar to a flotation device and a sump pump that will automatically turn on the sump when the tank is at capacity. So that starts at the, is there just one sump pump kind of attached to this, or is there more?
Yes, there's just one pump. So it would come on at its low water level and then run until it drops the water level below that.
And then how does that work? Then it comes out of that area and then it goes into the French drain?
It comes out of the tank into the French drain and then comes up out of the French drain onto the grass.
And is that like, how does that compare with like how the water goes out now? I mean, how do we know how much water is expelled out from the house that exists right now?
I have that that is on the sheets from the Montgomery County permit. Give me 1 second, I can get that for you.
I can ask like a question about the trees in the meantime. And also, do you guys know, like on that side of Trent, there aren't sidewalks, right? So it would just go directly into the street. Is that correct?
Just directly to the street, correct.
Okay.
So I have those numbers for you here.
Okay.
Montgomery County calculates it a little bit differently, but it's still an apples to apples. They use a 1.5 for the rainfall instead of the 2.6. So the existing site in totality, so the roof, driveway, et cetera, creates 397 cubic feet. And our proposed plan creates 489 cubic feet. And that's with no mitigation measures or no rain tanks, no nothing. That's just the impervious areas that exist. So we're increasing 23%.
Okay. Okay. And then with the trees, I guess Dr. Feather, I had a question for you. So is the one cherry tree that is being talked about, that's on top of the Washington Gas utility, whatever it is that tree really in danger of having to be come down if this house wasn't being built?
Well, if you didn't change the gas service, or if the gas service had to be changed for some reason, it might have to come down. But unless that happened, it wouldn't. I mean, it's not harming the gas line.
So the tree, I mean, if everything was the same for the next 10 years, 20 years, the tree is not a tree that would need to come down.
No, if all things stayed the same, no.
And then with the two trees, the two cherry trees in the front, and then you've got the three trees on the side that are the neighbor's actual trees. Dr. Feather, like when you're doing your town report, do those trees go in terms of like, you know, what happens if neighboring trees have to come down as well?
Well, I mean, unless the neighbor consents to removing them, then they have to be protected according to the code.
And I guess, so I'm confused as to why those trees would be in jeopardy.
Oh, because the roots extend over to the owner's property. So,
but I mean, you're not allowed to build within 7 feet of, you know,
but
like the sides. What are our side setbacks? 7 feet or 8 feet?
but it's not the building, it's the retaining wall. The retaining wall that goes by those trees, not the building.
So can't that retaining wall not be there?
Well, I don't know. We need to go on site and discuss what's going to happen there. That has to be something we work out.
Does anyone else know that? Maybe Shane, like, what is that retaining wall for? That would have to go on that side where those trees are.
Retaining wall is there to create a usable slope for the driveway, get into a garage.
but like in this picture, the driveway is not on that side. I mean, the driveway is like more in the middle, which is why the trees have to go. It's not on this, it's not, I mean, the driveway is certainly not 8 feet from the property line.
Well, you have to do some grading to get the grade difference between the adjoining lot and this driveway at 12.6%.
Or the retaining wall could be moved in towards the driveway.
Correct.
You could move the retaining wall in towards the driveway and protect the trees.
So the
That was-
tree, the
Yeah,
trees
that was our-
shouldn't, those trees then shouldn't have to be in jeopardy.
But I mean, according to code, they're protected. They're over 4 inches. So that's a protected tree and they have to be protected with a tree protection plan for a building permit.
Okay, and then for the cherry trees out front, what is the, like, how does it work if I want to take down the tree out front of my house? Like, can I just do that? Or what are, I know it's in our code and I should know this, but like, what are the qualifications?
No, that would be something that has to go before the council. For a public tree, that's something that has to go before the council. And then you would have to have some type of reason to do that, as far as like a hardship. It'd be like a waiver, like a hardship, why you want to remove the tree.
So like, if you're planning then to build a house on a lot that already has trees that are there, I mean, why should that be any different than anyone else who wants to, just have a remove a tree on our street?
Well, I think you're doing the same thing. You're giving a waiver to build the house for as far as the trees are concerned.
So we're saying that it's a hardship that these trees, these viable cherry trees, have to come down as a hardship. And that's why we're giving this waiver, is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's not called a waiver. You're allowing them to take the tree out to build the house.
Perhaps,
And
Councilor Rovak, perhaps you want to ask this question to the town attorney.
Would you like to phrase that for him? Town attorney.
I understand. I understand your
I
question.
think the town arborist was trying to interpret the law, and I think it's better if we have the town attorney.
Okay.
And I understand the question. So to try and explain this in a way that would make sense without trying to sound overly legalistic, the town code provides that if you want to remove a protected tree on private property, you have to get a permit, and the council is going to apply certain criteria to determine whether removal of that tree from private property is appropriate. And everyone's familiar with those factors in the code regarding the uniqueness of the rarity or status of the tree, its species and whatnot. Then if a tree is within the right of way, it's a different story. The town code doesn't apply the same process, because generally speaking, the town controls the right of way and nobody has the right to remove a tree from the right of way. However, lot owners who own lots that abut streets have a right to access the street. So the town has to allow reasonable requests to provide driveways to the streets so people can enter and exit their property. So what towns will often consider when a request is made for a driveway is there another location for the driveway such that existing street trees can be preserved? Are there safety issues, such as, is a driveway being proposed too close to an intersection? That may be a reason to deny a driveway at a particular spot. Other things like utilities in the right of way and the like. So as Dr. Feather was noting, there's no specific criteria to apply. The council has discretion to determine what's reasonable based on the circumstances of the property, keeping in mind that they've got to be allowed a driveway somewhere, but the council can decide what's the appropriate location for the driveway based upon the circumstances.
And because they have an existing driveway, so can you guys, I think I asked this in the last meeting, can you refresh my memory? Like, why can the existing driveway not stay existing?
The existing driveway is now where we've had to create 5,100 gallons worth of stormwater management.
Yeah, but I mean, that wasn't part of the plan initially. So, it was always that you were going to be moving that driveway and you weren't going to have any stormwater management. So, you can't say that it's from having to create stormwater management.
Well, the driveway is already at the steepest possible slope for a residential driveway. I believe Shane can elaborate on that. To get into a garage, if it came down grade, it would even get steeper.
Yeah, that's correct. And also the existing driveway that's there doesn't go to a garage. It's all the way on the left-hand property line. So you'd have to create, if the grade even allowed, you'd have to create a 7-foot jog to the right to get into your garage, get into the garage on this house. And there's not really a setback for that to make that kind of a step over to the side.
So, but I mean, is the other, how is that? Because I mean, I've seen the house, like, how is that different than from the middle part of that lot? Like, it's all kind of up a hill a little, right?
Well, the grade is descending
all
as you go to the left, looking at the house from the street.
So can you change the grade of the driveway then that's existing?
Well, Shane, the house I can't bury the house in the backyard. So there's a level to which you have to maintain concrete above grade. So the backyard goes uphill. It would only make the driveway steeper, which we've already reached the maximum. I hope that's making sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand, but maybe
The
Doug.
right-hand side of the street is higher than the left-hand side of the street, so it makes the slope of the driveway up to a house that's the same elevation flatter. So it's 12.6, which is still steep, but if that were on the left-hand side of the house, it would be 15 or 16% because the left-hand side of the lot is 2 feet lower than the right-hand side.
You mean the left-hand side where it already exists?
Correct.
Correct.
But the difference is now it doesn't go into a garage?
That's correct.
Okay. So there's no other place for a driveway besides where the cherry trees are?
Correct. And those root zones extend out across the entire lot anyway, so any construction in the front of this lot would be impacting those trees.
So Doug, I don't know if this is in your jurisdiction, but I mean, do you think that there's other ways that we could keep the driveway in the same location and work within that parameter so that we don't have to remove the trees and then the neighbors' 3 trees that are in jeopardy as well?
No, I agree with Shane's comment that the garage should be on the right side of the lot, which allows them to grade the lot so that the runoff in the back goes out towards the street. So it's my opinion the driveway's in the right location and the garage is in the right location. And if he kept the old driveway and tried to get it into the garage, it wouldn't work. Not enough room. And like you said, it's too steep. So it's my opinion, it's in the right location.
But then it has to take down 2 cherry trees.
Well, one cherry tree was sitting on Washington Gas facility, which has been removed already. The gas line's been removed. So that cherry tree is already in jeopardy due to the utility, not any of our doing.
But Dr. Feather just said that it wasn't, that if everything stayed the same, that it would be fine.
That event's already happened. When they removed their facility from the house, they've damaged the tree.
Is that true, Dr. Feather? I don't know, maybe it's not there anymore.
Is Dr. Feather still here?
He's muted.
They did do it. They did do a service disconnect on the property, as they do on all properties that are getting building permits. And I'd have to look at it to verify if it's, you know, not salvageable or not. But there is damage to it. And we don't, and the other thing, we don't regulate disconnects. Disconnects happen before before building permits are submitted to the town. On some properties, we have worked with owners to, you know, adjust disconnects or do something else, especially for sewer, where they could do it. You can't with gas, but with sewer, you can do disconnects closer to the house. With gas, you really can't. It has to be where the property line is.
Councilmember Roback, if I share my screen, I have it pulled up on Google Maps that shows the current layout that might help you visualize the current location of the driveway, if you'd like.
Sure.
Let's see. That's the current location of the driveway on the left, and you can see that it's kind of below where the house is. So that's where Shane was saying they would have to change the grade so that it was even higher than it is on the other side, and have to jog it to the right to connect to a garage, so that the garage would fit within the setbacks, which would probably also affect the roots of that cherry tree, actually.
Okay, all right, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. Before we take comments or questions from residents or guests, I want to go through the council again. Council President Circa, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you. No further
Okay,
questions.
Councilmember Barr, do you have a follow-up question?
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Heller.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kumar.
I do have a follow-up question. I appreciated Shannon's questions. I just want to clarify that the 18-inch cherry that is above the gas line, the official view right now is that we don't know whether it's damaged, and we don't know whether it is salvageable or not, because I was focused on the 22-inch, but I think, Chris, your comment was that it'd be hard for you to get the driveway to work with the 22-inch, which is the one that's on the north side. But the 18-inch, which is the younger tree that's on the gas line, I just want to be either Chris, you, Shane, Dr. Feather, just to clarify that we don't know whether that's salvageable or not.
I am not an arborist, but after they removed their gas line from the property, they dug very close, probably within 3 or 4 feet of the trunk of that cherry tree, which I assume would have caused it quite a bit of damage.
Okay.
They also need to completely disconnect that from the gas main and install a new facility in that location, or very close to that location. So I think that tree is in jeopardy. I think it would be much more practical for me to put a large caliper tree in there.
Thank you, Chris. And Dr. Feather?
Yeah, I'd have to look at it to evaluate it. I didn't really look at it when I did the report, as far as with the disconnect.
Okay, thank you, Will.
And Councilor Roback, do you have a follow-up question this time?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, before you call on residents or guests, do you want to put on the record any comments, written comments that were submitted?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that we received 4 comments. 2 were from residents who specifically objected to the removal of the town cherry trees, and 1 from the neighbor at 5508 Trent that objected to any removal of the trees on their property. And then the final comment was more generic and just thanking the council for careful deliberation of a challenging topic.
Okay, thank you. Has any resident or guest indicated they wish to speak tonight?
Yes, actually, our Public Safety Committee Chair, Kumar Vaswani, has joined us and has indicated that he wished to speak.
You're muted, Chair Vaswani. There you
Okay,
go.
thank you. I'm actually speaking as a private resident. I just have 2 questions. One is, if you have 48 hours to release this water, what happens if it freezes overnight while you're releasing water? Will the street turn into a sheet of ice? And the second question is more for the town. What happens if the pump fails years from now and the owner doesn't replace it? Does the town have any recourse?
So perhaps the first question is to the applicant, and the second to the town attorney or the town manager.
The dewatering typically would happen when there's a rain event, not a freeze event. So that should be a minimal consequence. What was the second question? Was that
Well,
for
the
the town?
second one is for I think for the town attorney or the town attorney, yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, if the device stopped working and it were to create a nuisance, the town could compel abatement of a nuisance. The design manual suggests that there be a maintenance agreement in place. Some communities, like the town of Chevy Chase, require applicants to execute a maintenance and inspection agreement that's recorded in land records that provides another mechanism to compel enforcement. If a
Okay.
system were to not be maintained and to stop working, the town
Okay.
could order that it be repaired.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vaswani, do you have any further questions or comments?
Well, I guess my comment is that within the next 20 years, you're going to face 200 new homes being built, and they'll probably be using this system. And so I would advocate for what the town attorney suggested, which is recording it in the land records, that there has to be maintenance on these systems.
Okay, well, the council will take that into consideration when they're deliberating. So thank you. Is that your final question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, anyone else?
Yes, Julie Abrams, who is actually one of the residents who had submitted comments, wished to elaborate on them for the council.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you,
Julie.
Julie.
Thank you. I'm Julie Abrams, Trent Street. Thank you, first of all, everybody, Town Council, and also thank you, Mr. Conlon, for figuring out how to address our stormwater on-site requirements. I do very greatly appreciate that. As a resident of Trent Street and Somerset, I am not happy about the cherry trees being removed. And I guess 2 questions. One is, it's the current driveway has been there, I'm assuming, since about the 1950s, and seemed to be fine being there. So it sounds like you said it would have to be moved, but actually, if I understand, it sounds like it's not because the driveway, it's because you want there to be a garage there. And so is that correct, that really it's not so much that the driveway can't be there, but that it can't be there if you also want a garage. That's one question. My second question is, if you had been told that.
Well, let's let him answer the first.
Okay,
question.
sure. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, I think that is a normal feature of a modern home to have a garage. And I think most people, given, especially in Chevy Chase and Bethesda, where I live, the amount of car crime, it seems very reasonable to have a garage in your home.
Right, but is that correct? That it's more for the garage that you need to move the driveway, not it's not the driveway per se. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess the other question is, if you had been told, or in this kind of house, this property, that you weren't allowed to take down trees, would you have designed or been able to design something that could maintain the trees, including the cherry trees?
So given everything involved with utilities, construction, grading, it's very difficult. I've built probably 300 homes in the county. It's very difficult. It's only an 8,300 and some change square foot lot. There's very little frontage to get all of the facilities in a new home, or any home, frankly, even a remodeling project, without doing some disruption. So it seems better to remove the trees, replace them with new viable trees, as large of a caliper as available, than to try to burden the town with a dead tree later.
Okay. No, I appreciate your offering the larger caliper trees, but I would just comment, if they're 18 and 22 inch, even larger caliper, even beyond the 2 or 2.5 inch, would take at least 10 to 15 years, if I understand correctly, to get back to that size. So it wouldn't be quite the same. So just, I'd say that for the record.
Yeah, no, I understand. Everybody
Okay.
at some point had their home built in there, and they all had to deal with this, even if it was 50 years ago. It's an unfortunate fact of construction. I couldn't drop it in without without coming across the front line. So we do everything we can. I mean, I'm probably the biggest advocate to save any tree I can possibly can, and we've shown that over the years in our construction.
Okay. I would just, as a just very final comment for the town council, that I greatly appreciate how much you've adopted the stormwater interim code. And I hope that we can get to a norm where construction would also require the current trees that are healthy in place, particularly mature trees, to be maintained as a prerequisite as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Has anyone else indicated they wish to speak?
There are no other comments at this time.
So, Mr. Conlon, is there, you now have the opportunity, if you want to rebut any comment that was made during the public hearing?
I don't think so. The only comment that was made earlier about using the water in our proposed tanks as gray water, unfortunately, the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission doesn't allow unpaid for or untreated water back into their sewer system. It would be adopting more wastewater than was paid for in their waste system. So that's a great idea, and I would wish somebody would allow for it later, but that's the reason it can't be done with current regulations.
Okay, thank you very much. And this concludes the public portion of the hearing. The record is now closed, and the council may now discuss and deliberate on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, and may vote on the application. And I will turn this over to the council president to lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say I appreciate the applicant's efforts to work with the town on things like larger caliber trees and trying to address the stormwater regulations that we've recently adopted. My position remains that this proposal is non-compliant with our code. The code says all new building structures shall include a stormwater drainage plan. The plan should meet the following minimum requirements: storage for all runoff from roof surfaces, et cetera, for a 1-year storm event. in devices such as dry wells, rain tanks, cisterns, green roofs, or other devices approved by the town council. But this system that's being proposed by the developer actually starts pumping water out of the system during the rainfall. And they've acknowledged the poor quality of the clay soil to percolate any of that water. So all that water is just going to flow over a couple of feet of lawn into the driveway, and we really won't have accomplished much. And I believe that Debbie's observation was correct. That while this house might be set back further in some areas, it is a larger house creating more stormwater runoff. So those are my thoughts. Let's go around. I guess Robin.
Yeah, actually, on this one, I don't agree with you, Steve. As I understand the state code here, the tanks start to clear after the rain event is over. And so after they stop filling, they start to clear. And in that respect, the water is flowing after the rain event is over. And because of that, it is very much an improvement on no mitigation. For the reasons I stated earlier, that there's much slower flow. The only other thing they could do, given Chris's comment, is they could use the water for irrigation, and that would take some of the water out, but by no means very much. So I think this plan is as good as it gets, is what it boils down to for this very challenging property. On the trees, I think I hear Chris offering a solution, which is that, in essence, he thinks that the cherry tree, the smaller cherry tree, the one that's over the utility line, is a goner anyway. And if it is a goner, he's going to replace it with the largest caliber tree that he can. And I think that's about the only solution. If it's not a goner, then we can keep the tree. He has reassured me on the neighbor's cherry trees, and it clearly is a discussion between Tolbert and the builders on what the final determination there is to maximize the chances that the neighbor's trees are preserved. I'll leave it there.
Is it my turn?
Sorry, there was a drop sync there on the audio.
So it's my turn.
Or we go to, sure. You look like you're ready, Debbie. Go for it.
I'm usually next after Robin, you know. I'm having a hard time with this because I appreciate, you know, Chris and his company and trying to do something, you know, pretty and neat and sell a great house. But I disagree that you can't make a modern house without disrupting everything that's going to be disrupted. You know, many of us have renovated our houses. I'm a great case in point where I disrupted nothing. You know, I went up into the air and I built a beautiful, big modern house. And it was, you know, just a model for the neighborhood because it was done early on. I think that houses can be built and be respectful of the spaces that they're going into. And that I recognize that when you know, the builders come in, they want to maximize profit. And, you know, so that's what happened with the first plan and no water mitigation because that maximized profit. Then we said no, and they came back with all of a sudden they can have a plan. But I'm worried that if we approve this permit, that we're going to constantly be having the same conversation with every builder that comes through town. And I guess my question is to Ron. Ron, can we deny this permit legally?
Well, the permit criteria for the town council to apply tonight is whether or not the code has been complied with, essentially. So that's what the council's deliberating on right now. Has the code been complied with, yes or no?
Even
And
in
that
terms of the
decides whether or
trees,
not you grant the permit. Say again?
even the trees?
The trees is different. So for the construction, the question is, does the proposed construction comply with the code, including the stormwater ordinance? With respect to the tree removals, the trees on the private property, the spruce, the 11-inch spruce that's within the footprint of the proposed house, the council applies the criteria in the code, the desirability of the species, given its age, size, quality, the extent to which environmental degradation might result, the desirability of preserving its tree cover, desirability of its species, whether it's diseased, insect infested or injured, whether it's in danger of falling, or a threat to injury to life or property, any hardship that the applicant may suffer if the permit's not issued, the extent to which removal is necessary to achieve proposed development, redevelopment, land use, utility construction, or utility maintenance, and the extent to which there's no reasonable or prudent alternative, and any reforestation proposed by the applicant. Then with respect to the trees in the right-of-way, there's more flexibility there. The council's got to give the lot owner reasonable access to enter and exit the street, and the council can determine what's reasonable based on the facts and circumstances, including what the testimony was tonight, that there's an argument that any development of the property is likely to impact the trees, given the width of the frontage, the utility services that have to be connected and reconnected, and the amount of equipment and vehicles and activity that's going to be going on at the site. And whether you find it reasonable to have a garage, and because the garage drives the proposed location and footprint of the house, given the sloping topography, as noted by the town building permit administrator and engineer. Based on the sloping topography, the driveway needs to be on the right side so that runoff from the backyard can go to the street, given the topography. So there's lots of things for the council to weigh. It's not just where the driveway needs to be based on whether or not you have a garage, but also based on the topography and how you're going to convey runoff from the rear yard, if I understand the testimony correctly.
Okay. I'm really betwixt and between here, because I think that a house could be built there or renovated, and it could be a beautiful modern home, and we wouldn't have to disrupt all that we have to disrupt here. And I think we're going to be faced with this again and again. And I really don't, I look forward to hearing from everybody else. Thanks.
Steve, would you like me to go ahead next?
I'm mute. Sorry, Kabir. Yes, please.
Actually, I have a question for you, Steve. Could you say a bit more as to why you don't believe this is meeting the code on stormwater?
Because my understanding of the intent of our stormwater regulation and my reading of the language of the stormwater regulation Well, so the intent is to manage stormwater on site. To not impact neighbors, to not impact street runoff that goes to the Chesapeake Bay and causes damage and degradation to our ecosystem. That's my understanding of the intent. The language says that the water shall be stored on site. I think it's no offense, Ron, but very lawyerly to say, well, we hold it in the tank and then we start pumping as soon as the rain is over. So we stored it for the 24-hour storm and then we dumped it all. That certainly is not my understanding of the intent. But even if we look at the language and what's been reported to us by the developer, they will start pumping during the rainfall as soon as the water reaches a low water limit inside the tank. So that means that after, say, the first hour of that 24-hour storm, they're just pumping water out. And I agree with Robin, this is better than nothing. The water will be distributed. But even the developer acknowledges they're expecting zero infiltration. They expect that all 4,877 gallons will just run down to the street. I just think that's not acceptable. I also think that the developer has failed to comply with the Maryland Department of Environment Stormwater Management Manual, which we don't impose, but it's just good design practice that says they should provide calculations that show how over the course of a year, as we look at the anticipated average rainfall events over the course of a year, how much rain would be used in the system and how much rain would just overflow out of the system. Because as Robin indicated, there are things that you could use the water for. Even if you can't use it for toilets, it could be used for irrigation. You could do this calculation, but these cisterns, to me, that they're not even as good as rain barrels. Rain barrels, you can hook up a hose and use them for irrigation afterwards. These are just buried rain barrels that dump the water. I'm not happy with that as a solution.
I saw Robin reacting to something he was saying, so I would love to hear from him. But my understanding is that that we are saying on-site management, but that means that eventually the water seeps on-site from whatever storage device we have. It goes into the ground on-site. That's our ideal, and it doesn't leave the property. And so here, the way I'm understanding they're achieving that is into the French drains, overflow from the French drains into the ground, right? And that it only kind of daylights if there is an overflow in the tanks itself, and there's sort of a managed seepage into that's what I'm understanding. Is this?
They make it sound like it will seep into the soil. It will not. It's clay. No water will go into the soil. Almost none. I think like 0.1%. You can look at the infiltration rate for clay soil.
Okay.
So almost all of that water.
I see. So
4,800. Let 77 gallons go into the soil. 4,800 gallons are just going to go over the grass, get filtered a little bit, as Robin indicated, and then dump into the street. That's just not what our stormwater manual intended.
I see. Robin, do you have? I saw you shaking your head at one point. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I mean, what I was shaking my head at was the assumption that it would fill up in an hour. It's a 2.6-inch storm, and the rate at which it fills up depends on the rate at which the rain is coming down. Now, I think we've had one event recently where we did have rain coming down at a rate of 2.6 inches an hour, but that is an extraordinarily heavy rain. Normally, 2.6 inches comes over an extended storm of multiple hours. And what happens is when the rain stops, and for most storms, it will stop before the tank is full because most storms are not 2.6 inches, then the water discharges. The point of the gravel pit is not to absorb the water. The point of the gravel pit is to disperse the water so that it doesn't channel. And when it doesn't channel, it doesn't cause erosion, and that's important. So it's designed as well as it can be, given both the soil condition, which is clay, and the fact that there are major hills on this property. That means the water is tumbling down it if it's not otherwise managed.
I have, if I may say, it sounds that both of you are effectively agreeing, which is that, and I think it almost sounds like if we are to say, I think we could potentially say that this does not meet our code as we understand it to be, but we might be willing to kind of give a variance given the nature. I don't know whether we can even say that given the nature of this lot and the topography, that this could potentially be the best way to minimize, runoff, even though it doesn't meet potentially the intent of our code. But I don't want to, I would love to hear from Shannon too, but that's, it's appreciate you indulging me there, Steve.
So I have a couple questions, and I don't know, I mean, it sounds like Robin really knows a lot about this, so maybe they're directed at Robin. So is this rain tank like a approved Montgomery County, I don't know what it's ESD to the MEP, I don't know what that means, but like, basically like there's certain things that are approved like dry wells, and there's certain things that are not, like attenuation devices. Is
Right.
this approved for Montgomery County?
First of all, we are not under Montgomery County. We are under the state of Maryland.
I'm just asking about Montgomery County.
What ours is a review that is independent of the counties. And so the manual that applies to us and the manual that Doug referred to is the state manual. And yes, this is approved in the state manual.
Is this approved by Montgomery County?
And Montgomery County has not issued one way or the other on this. They have not. So
like if they were to go back through and do do the Montgomery County, I understand that Montgomery County didn't require any stormwater management and gave them 100% waiver. But if this was in place for Montgomery County, would this have been approved? And then therefore their waiver would have been only 40% or 50%, let's say.
First of all, I'm not going to try to answer a contingent question like that. I don't know what they would do under those circumstances.
It's not a contingent question. I'm just trying to understand.
The issue is that the county's own policy on this is not relevant to the town's decision. What is relevant to the town's decision is the state's code.
It's actually relevant to me because I am like trying to understand it. So it might not be relevant to the town's decision, but I am curious as to if you know whether or not this would be qualified as something under Montgomery County.
As far as I know, rain tanks are not used in the county's mitigation measures.
So it probably, because I'm looking at my chart, like to see what qualifies and what doesn't qualify, because I know attenuation devices do not qualify. I don't know if this qualifies or not. And it would be an interesting thing because, we don't know I don't know the ins and outs of all the stormwater. I'm not a civil engineer, but if other people approve it.
It is the case that it's the case that the state has approved a number of mitigation measures, including rain tanks, that are not in our county code. And I don't know, the county code was adopted in 2010 or 11. I'm not quite sure why that is, but the state has a broader set of mitigation measures than the county does. Our town lawyer wishes to make a point.
To the extent it might help frame the question and answer Councilmember Rovak's question, the town code expressly provides that storage must be provided in devices such as dry wells, rain tanks, cisterns, green roofs, or other devices approved by the town council. So the town expressly approves rain tanks and cisterns. This device is approved by the town. The question is whether it is providing storage as required by the town code. And, as argued by Council President Circo and Council Member Barr. And to the extent it helps address Councilmember Kumar's question, I think it is important for the council to deliberate on whether the town code requires on-site infiltration, because that's somewhat different than requiring on-site control. As Councilmember Barr explained earlier, a primary goal of the town code, as stated in the preamble, is to control the adverse impacts associated with stormwater runoff. And so a primary concern is what happens to water when it leaves the site. Does it carry with it pollutants, particles? Does it create erosion? And so, the applicant is trying to slow the water down to address those things. But you do have to decide whether the town code requires storage on site. Does it require, infiltration on site, and that disallows runoff? Yeah.
And could I just add that the 48-hour window is a state requirement. And the reason for that state, and that's as Shane Green was pointing out, that's a maximum. And the reason why it's a maximum is because you want the tank to clear for the next rain event. So it doesn't, you want to overflow as little as possible. And so the state's building in that 48-hour window to get rid of the water to allow the next rain event to come in.
And as the testimony indicated, the tank would have within it, like a flotation device, like you see in a sub pump. And as water enters the tank and the water causes that flotation device to raise above the low water level, the pump's going to turn on. However, as I understand, the pump has a flow rate that is slow. It's not like a traditional sub pump that's just going to dump everything in 3 seconds. It's going to be timed according to the setting that's put on it, with a maximum of a 48-hour drawdown.
To quickly react to that, Steve, if you permit me, I think that our intent was, even though it, in this deliberation sounds like a very high bar, was on-site. That's what you're calling on-site infiltration. Our intent was we manage it all on-site. I think that was the motivation behind the new ordinance. But arguably, as we have identified even in the previous council meeting, that there are topographic and other challenges with respect to this lot. And that's why my mind goes to that potentially this comes close to a possible solution to mitigate stormwater, even if it doesn't meet that high bar of on-site infiltration. I don't know whether you see it that way, Steve, but I wonder if that's consistent with sort of your line of thinking that, it is not ultimately meeting the intent of our ordinance, but is this getting as close as possible to a solution in mitigating runoff?
I don't think so. I don't think the developer is actually focused on satisfying the vision of our stormwater regulations, and they didn't consider any changes to the design of the house. They really took a minimalist effort to try to comply with what they read as the letter of our law. I'm not sure I agree with the suggestion that this is a low rate of flow. In this 1 year stormwater event, we would accumulate over 4,700 gallons in these cisterns, And if it takes 48 hours, you're pumping it out at over 100 gallons an hour. If you want to clear it in 24 hours, you're pumping it out at more than 200 gallons per hour. That's not a trickle. And the float device or the activation device that various folks have referred to will start at some point in that rainfall. Now, in some of the other, and Rob and I get along very well on all this stuff. This is really nuances. I think we're arguing on some of the fine points or the application here. But the way the system is designed for the 1-year event, it's going to be pumping water out while the rain is falling. It just is. And I appreciate Ron reading from the purpose. He didn't read the entire purpose from our regulation. After we talked about controlling the adverse impacts associated with stormwater runoff from developed and developing land, we're also to reduce stream channel erosion, pollution, siltation, sedimentation, and local flooding. Now, I would agree that having the water sheet flow over the grass would reduce siltation, but it's not going to reduce local flooding at all.
Yeah,
we will
yes,
have the same
it
amount
does,
of flow.
Steve. Sorry, it does.
How? I'm just looking at the numbers.
I can
We're
see
not
like
infiltrating any.
we have a device next door to us that like fills up very quickly and it sheet flows out and it just pours out. So, I mean, that's how I'm envisioning it, that this would fill up and it would just pour out of this device. And especially if there's rain events that are more than, 1 day apart, because I've been tracking rain now. And, there's actually, there have been several storm events that have been over 2.65 this past year. And that come, one after the other. So I do think that this system will pour water into the streets from it.
Right.
And then,
this-
sorry, go ahead.
A quick question to Shannon there. The system that you're referencing, that you're familiar with next door, does it have also a French drain?
No.
It doesn't have that. It just sort of overflows from the tanks. It doesn't.
The system next door was brought on by the builder after everything had been approved, because he basically dug so deep that he hit the water table. And so water was constantly flowing into the what was to be the basement of the house. They needed to do something about that. So he's pumping it out with the sump pump, and he's using a straightforward sump pump. It's not calibrated. So it is indeed pouring the water out of the house.
This is Shannon's house, right?
That's next door to
an
Shannon.
attenuation device. The sump
Why he actually managed to hit the water table, I don't know. It just was dumb, is all I can say. What is happening here is that it's a calibrated flow. That is, you dial the number of how quickly the water comes out. So it is a different kind of flow out of this device.
But
it does reduce flooding, Steve. The issue is if you leave the water unregulated, it pours off this property very rapidly because it's coming downhill fast over grass into the storm drain. It's rushing and washing everything with it, and that is very damaging for flooding and very damaging for carrying particulates into the stream. With this, what you're doing is slowing the whole thing down. And yes, it's not terribly slow, but it's like a moderate stream flowing as opposed to a rushing torrent flowing. That's the difference.
Debbie?
Is the house that's there right now as is there any water problems from that? Is it rushing onto the street? Is it going to neighbors' yards?
Yeah, I mean, with the current house and the current homes we have in town, we saw 16 feet of erosion in the stream bank of the Riddle Falls branch, to the extent that the sewers were exposed and WSSC had to come back and repair the sewers. So yes, it was causing problems. And this house will cause fewer problems.
Have the neighbors Is it rushing into the neighbors' yards? Is it rushing into the street?
This home is fairly close to the storm drain, so I don't think it directly affects the neighbors, this one.
Debbie, the two things I
Mr.
would say in response to that, very quickly to answer Mayor Slavin to Councilmember Heller's question. I do live technically
Right.
downstream from this property, and you do see a fair bit of runoff entire down Trent Street. It's pretty sizable. There are 4 drains here that capture a part of that runoff, but I think it continues down. Please also keep in mind the current lot has an impervious sizable driveway as well. The current lot as it is, even though the driveway is where it is, it's an impervious driveway, so the water flows from that too. My sense is I share Steve's concerns, but I suspect that this, without being an engineer, as Shannon was saying, without having the kind of expertise to confidently fall off on one side or another, that this is likely to reduce what we see today, given that it's an impervious driveway, given that there is a attempted mitigation device, that it's a bit more than what is that it is likely to reduce the runoff.
But I don't know.
Imagine how.
Well, so first off, they said that the imperviousness, it's or the water runoff will increase 23%, is what Shane had said. I don't know if that is including the patio in the back, or if that was just from the roof runoff. Does anyone know?
I think that's just the roof. It's a larger roof.
Huge
Okay,
roof.
and so the patio is also a surface where, that would add to, well, actually, I was back there today. I don't think that they have a patio. So that cement would add to more runoff. And then it also doesn't include any of the neighbors' runoff that comes through their lot as well. And so the other thing that I was going to mention, like, aside from the water runoff, is like, for that driveway, does anyone know, like, could they potentially take the existing driveway where it is and go all the way back and then have a garage in the back of the house?
Maybe.
So Mr. President, before that question is tried to answer, in order to assist the council in coming to a conclusion tonight, I would like to ask the town attorney to sort of frame the discussion. So the council could approve the application. The council could deny, and if the council denies it, what would need to be included in the decision? And could you also talk about what are the appeal rights of the applicant if the application is turned down?
Sure. So, yeah, the mayor correctly described the two paths. One is to approve the permit, and I'm just talking about the construction of the house now. I'll get to the trees later, or deny the permit application. If the permit application is denied, the applicant has the ability to appeal the denial to the circuit court or to request a variance, and then a variance hearing would be held. With respect to the trees, the council can decide whether or not to grant a tree removal permit. And if a permit is denied, the applicant can appeal that decision to the circuit court. There's no separate process for requesting a waiver or variance with respect to that council decision.
Okay, so I think you've deliberated quite a bit, and based on what the town attorney has said, is any council member prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd make the motion to approve with conditions, yeah.
Second.
What conditions?
Okay, so Mr. Town Attorney, is that legally and technically sufficient?
I mean, well, you've got to give the conditions, but.
Right, yeah, we do need to give the conditions, and if I could jump in there, Councilmember Barr, I had some suggestions. So with respect to the retaining wall, the arborist indicated that the arborist needed to further assess whether the retaining wall could be constructed where it's currently located and preserve those trees. So an appropriate condition could be that the permit is granted, including the permit for, well, yeah, for the retaining wall, with the condition that the arborist confirm that the trees on the neighboring lot can be adequately protected. And if not, then the retaining wall be removed or relocated to a position approved by the town arborist. Secondly, that the reforestation recommendations of the town arborist be implemented. And
Well, yeah, on trees, I'd add that the other cherry tree, the one that's over the utility line, either be retained or replaced by the largest caliber tree available, cherry tree available.
So can,
and could you define available? Would that be reasonably available from
reasonably
the
available
service
in,
provider customarily used by the
yes.
applicant?
Yes.
Well, Robin, wouldn't we want the largest caliber tree to replace the other cherry as well at whatever location?
Yes, I guess we do. Yeah, thank you.
so
And then there was also discussion about whether this stormwater drainage system should be subjected to a maintenance and inspection agreement. And if the council found that appropriate, that can be a condition as well, that a stormwater maintenance and inspection agreement be executed and recorded in land records in a form approved by the town attorney.
Yes, I was going to bring that up actually, that this is only going to work with maintenance agreements. So whatever it takes to make the maintenance agreement happen, then that should be the condition, yes.
We have a couple of people who raised.
hold on a second. Right now, what you're doing is you are, council member Barr has the floor. He is creating the motion so that we can then have a discussion on it. So Councilmember Barr, do you think now you have everything in your motion?
Yeah, I mean, there's the accept the building engineer's report on condition of the whatever it is, the building height and wall check as well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the town attorney to read the motion. Do you have everything you want in the motion now?
That's it now, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Town Attorney, can you please summarize the motion so we can see if Councilmember Kumar will second it?
Yes, give me 1 second, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, take your time.
Thank you, Ron.
So the motion would be to grant the construction permit and tree removal permits with the following conditions: that the retaining wall be approved with the condition that the town arborist confirms that it can be located in its proposed location with adequate protection for the trees on the adjoining lot. And if adequate protection cannot be provided, then the retaining wall would be removed or relocated to a location approved by the town arborist. That a stormwater drainage system inspection and maintenance agreement be executed by the applicant and recorded in land records so that it's binding on successors in title in a form approved by the town attorney. That a height and wall check survey be provided at the appropriate time as indicated in the building administrator and engineer's report, and that reforestation be provided with bonding as recommended by the town arborist. However, the tree number 1, the 18
inches.
18-inch tree, be either retained or replaced with a replacement tree having a maximum caliper as available by the provider customarily used by the applicant, but no less than 4 inches in caliper. And that the second tree, the
22.
22-inch caliper, be similarly replaced with a tree of the maximum caliper available, but no less than 4 inches.
Okay, hold on. Before you second, I think the town arborist, since he was mentioned in that motion, wanted to comment. Dr. Feather, how did you?
Thank you, Mayor. The larger caliber trees require more maintenance than the standard 2 to 2.5 caliber trees. So I would include that the builder would have to warranty the tree for one year, and also that would include maintenance on the tree with watering would be the responsibility of the developer.
Okay, so Councilor Barr, did you want to add that?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay, and you got that, Mr. Town Attorney, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councilor Kumar, are you seconding that motion?
Second.
Okay, so now discussion. I think Councilor Rovak had raised her hand.
Yes.
So do you guys know, so I mean, does the tree removals have to be in conjunction with this building permit and the stormwater management? It's all one?
We could take them as separate motions, but traditionally we've incorporated them into one motion.
Well, that's a question to the town attorney, really, because there's a motion on the floor.
Yes, it could be separated. So you could.
I still have a lot of questions about these trees because like if that one 18-inch is already ruined by the gas line, maybe that's enough. Maybe the second one then doesn't have to come down. I mean, maybe the driveway can be looked at in relation to that second tree, and the cherry tree doesn't have to go. And I don't know the answer to those questions.
The our own building engineer said that the only possible path for a driveway that would include a garage goes right through that cherry tree. And so that's my basis for accepting that cherry tree has to go. I mean, it's certainly, it's a mature tree and a lovely tree. But I think we've got to allow the house the garage. And if we allow the house the garage, then that tree has to go with what falls down.
But then, I mean, at the same time, like we just, what if the garage was like towards the back of the house or the back of the yard on the same side?
Shannon, there's another dimension. I'm not 100% sure, but the retaining wall is under question right now. It may need to be moved to save the 3 trees of the neighboring lot. And if it's moved down south, it would come closer to the, it could arguably, I have no idea of knowing, but what I've picked up from our conversation could impact the root system of the bigger tree. So I think there are other dimensions here that might challenge the 22-inch independent of the driveway.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just, that street is gorgeous with the tree line.
No, I agree.
Cherry trees, and it just ruins it to take them down and to put some other kind of high caliber tree up next to it.
No, I totally agree. Maybe as a first step, we should separate the motions.
Well, you'd have to make an amendment.
Yeah.
Well,
we can reject this motion, make a new motion. We could go that way.
I'd like the motion to stand. I mean,
okay.
Let me say a little bit more.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Am I the only one in favor of it? Okay.
So Robin is in favor.
I'm in favor of the motion too, but I'm assuming we will make a new motion.
Well, you're voting now, so.
Okay, fine. I'm in favor.
All those in favor of the motion? I see
Yes.
Councilor Barr and Councilor Kumar. All those opposed?
Nay.
I see Circo, Rovak, and Heller. So the motion fails. Would anyone like to make a motion, another motion?
I would like to make a motion picking up on Councilmember Rovak's suggestion to separate the stormwater from the
So then
cherry
make a
trees.
motion, I guess, Mr. Town Attorney, he should make a motion on the application, right? The building application.
Yeah, the building application should go first because that dictates whether or not the tree removals are necessary.
Okay, Councilor Kumar,
Motion to approve the building application with the conditions as stated by the town attorney earlier, which I don't all
Okay.
remember.
okay,
Yes.
is there a second?
Well, actually, Mr. Mayor, so
Do you have to repeat them?
the building permit application includes the driveway. And so if you're approving the driveway in its current location, then
It impacts the tree.
right.
Okay,
Tree
so-
number 2 is
Okay, so Councilor Kumar, you're gonna have to work with the town attorney on your motion.
So why don't we have everything but the driveway and the trees in the motion?
well, but you can't approve the location of the house with the existing garage configuration without deciding where the driveway is going to go. So I do think it makes sense to
Include it.
deliberate on all these together. I'm not seeing a
I
easy way
see.
to separate.
Okay.
Although you could possibly separate tree number 1,
Okay.
but I mean it's hard to
No,
know.
I
because
appreciate,
depending on
I
where you put the
appreciate that.
driveway.
I appreciate that. So do we, where do we go from here?
Perhaps there needs to be more deliberation on what to do with the trees, and before there's a motion.
Okay,
Or it can stand as the application has been turned down.
Correct.
I think we should make a second effort. I really do.
I agree.
Well, go make a.
I'd like a motion from one of the three who opposed the prior motion.
But they're not required to make, no one is required to make a motion.
I think let's follow the town, Ron's suggestion and pick up on what Shannon was saying about the trees. And Shannon, do you mind just saying once again, you were saying the 18-inch could be potentially damaged, but on the 22-inch, you wonder if that's salvageable. And
Yeah,
that
I mean,
might
I think
impact.
that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned right now, I would like to, explore, if we take out that 18-inch tree and we leave the 22, what does that look like? And then also if we leave the driveway as is and we have a garage towards the back of the house or something, if that's even an option, I have no idea if it is or not. But there's plenty of houses in this neighborhood that don't have garages.
Okay, let me
So-
ask the town attorney, similar to last month, when the hearing was continued to seek that additional information from the applicant. Isn't that a third possibility tonight?
Sure, that's a possibility. You could also open the record for the limited purpose of addressing that question. For example, you might ask the town arborist, what is the tree protection area, the radius of tree protection that would be required around tree number 2, such that it might or may not be possible to maybe at least move the apron a little bit and curve the driveway.
Well, it will be up to someone to make a motion to that effect.
No, do we need to make a motion?
To reopen the record, yes, you do.
I'm willing to do that. I would like to address this today, if possible, if others are amenable to that.
Well, you make a motion.
Motion to open the record.
Second.
But doesn't.
Do I need to
Mr. Attorney,
specify?
Doesn't he have to state what the purpose of opening the record is and to who will be?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that would be helpful to guide the testimony.
So motion to open the record to understand the tree protection plan and tree protection parameters from the town arborist
So,
for the permit in question.
so
And
Mr. Town
how the
Attorney-
driveway configuration might
And how the-
possibly be
So,
changed.
And how
so-
the driveway configuration might possibly be changed. I think
so,
that's
Mr.
seconded
Town
by Robert.
Attorney, so is there a second to the motion?
I think it was Robin.
Yeah, I second it.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Town Attorney, this would mean that if we reopened the hearing, the town council would have the opportunity to ask questions of the town arborist. And
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
that's
And
the
all,
only,
and
ahead.
all interested parties would have the opportunity to testify on the limited scope of the reopened record.
so what would the, so first we would have the council, the opportunity to ask questions of the arborist, and then the applicant could present rebuttal.
Correct. And other interested parties that testified tonight could testify again as well on that limited issue if they so wished.
So that would mean that anyone who testified during the hearing would have the opportunity to comment.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there a further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did everybody vote yes? I think so. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Okay, so now we will call upon Dr. Feather to be unmuted, and Council President Circo, do you have a question?
Well, I think the question from the council is, what is the tree protection plan proposed for the large cherry tree, town cherry tree? And I guess in your estimation, is that adequate to protect the tree? I guess there is no tree protection plan because it's just planning to come down. Sorry, so.
Yeah,
Hold on, this is.
So I guess the
If
question
it were
is,
to be retained, what would be the
right,
radius?
what tree protection plan would be necessary to have a greater than 50% likelihood of saving the large cherry tree?
look, I have the plan in a scale plan in front of me. And you'd probably have to move the driveway to the south or to the smaller tree, 8 to 10 feet, but then you'd be encroaching on the smaller tree. So
What? I think
yeah.
we're considering the smaller tree to.
I think the president is frozen.
Can I finish his
The
question?
smaller tree
No,
was
no,
going
no, no,
away.
no.
Okay,
this
okay.
is-
Go ahead.
you
No, no
will go-
problem.
You will all have a chance. You all have a chance. Council Member Barr.
I have no questions of Tolbert at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Heller.
I just feel like we're kicking the can down the road.
This is, no,
Yeah.
this is not discussion. This is
Okay,
your
then I
opportunity.
don't
to
have any,
ask-
I don't have any questions for.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Circo, are you back? President Circo? I don't think so. Councilor Kumar.
Tolbert, just to clarify, the reason why we are focused on the larger tree is because of the statements that were made earlier that the smaller tree might already be damaged because of what happened with the gas line. And so keeping that in mind, if there was a shift in the driveway or there was a reconfiguration, could we come up with an outcome where the larger tree is saved and the smaller tree, is not?
Yeah, so I'd say 8 to 10 feet. You'd have to move let's say 10 feet, move the driveway.
And
Looking
Mayor
at-
Slavin, we can hear from the builder, right? As rebuttal?
He'll have
Yeah,
a
yeah,
chance. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Tolbert.
Yes,
Is that your only question?
That's the only question.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rovak. Do you have
I don't
questions
have
of
any
the town
question.
arborist?
I don't have a question for him.
Okay, thank you. Council President Circo, I'm sorry we lost you. Were you able to hear any of the interchange?
Yes, I got most of it.
Did you have any
Technical
further
questions.
questions?
Nope.
Okay,
Can we
thank
ask
you.
a question of the building engineer during this reopened hearing?
No. Can they?
Yes, yeah, on the limited scope, Mr. Mayor. So
All right.
Okay, so
if the question's related to the tree or the driveway reconfiguration.
okay, so Council President Circo, did you have any questions of the engineer?
No.
Thank you. Councilor Barr.
Yeah, Doug, in your mind, is it possible to build the driveway somewhere in the back of the house so as to avoid the larger cherry tree? If you might be.
Just off,
Yes, sir.
just off the top of my head, without really studying, I guess it's possible. I would, anything is possible. It could be moved over. It could have a like a serpentine shape to it. So I think their engineer could look at it, but I think it's possible. Yes.
All right, thank you.
I don't see anything stopping it from moving over.
Is that your last question, Councilor Barr?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Heller.
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Kumar.
I would like to hear from the applicant, but no question at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rovak.
I have no questions for Mr. Lohmeyer.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Conlon, now is your opportunity to present any rebuttal testimony.
So thank you for considering this. I believe we placed the driveway in the least impactful position. If we move the driveway down grade, as we discussed before, or serpentine, we're creating more impervious. If we create a driveway to the rear of the lot and put another structure back there, such as a detached garage, we're creating more impervious, substantially more actually. I believe we've already reached the maximum grade for the driveway. Unfortunately, this is a very difficult lot with very difficult circumstances, and I think we've done the best possible solution given the amount of time we spent to try to, again, minimize the impact on the development of this lot.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest who has spoken previously in this hearing indicated they wish to speak again?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Town Attorney, to go back to conclude the hearing, is a motion needed, or I can just say that the public hearing is again concluded?
You can just say that it's
Yes.
concluded again.
Okay,
Mr.
so the public hearing is concluded and we will go back to deliberation on the application. So given the reopening of the testimony, does any councilor wish to make a motion?
Any motion? We
can
cannot
make
have a oh, go ahead, Debbie.
I can make a motion. I don't know if this is a proper motion,
Well,
but I think we should not give this house as stands a permit, that we should ask the developer to go back and redevelop his plan and make it so it makes sense for our town. Is that a motion?
Mr. Town Attorney, can you help her craft a proper motion?
Sure. So it would basically be a motion to deny the application because the town code has not been complied with.
Right.
Okay, is that acceptable? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Is there a second? I see Circo. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those. in favor- Go ahead.
I would like someone to say in what way the town code is not being adhered to.
Yes, thank you, because that will need to be included in the written decision.
Steve, can you speak to that?
Sure. The stormwater is not held on site in accordance with our regulation. Or not on, stormwater is, what's the word? Let me look at the wording.
Stored?
It's not stored. Thank you. Somebody said stored and they were correct. Stormwater is not properly stored during a 1-year stormwater event. Rainwater is not properly stored during a 1-year stormwater event.
Okay, is that what you would like to include, Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And with respect to the trees,
Shannon, help me out on the trees.
Excuse me, if I can just.
So I think that the owner has not displayed complete hardship as to why this tree would have to come down.
Mr. Town Attorney, is that legally and technically sufficient?
yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Council President Circo, are you willing to accept those changes to the motion?
Well, yes, but I have a question for our town attorney. Since we've already had a vote on approving the application and we denied it, why do we need to have another vote denying the application?
There has to be a decision denying. So the decision.
Oh,
well,
I follow.
The motion to approve failed for lack of majority, but so that just means the application's still pending.
I got you. Thank you.
Okay, so Council President Circo, do you accept the elaboration to the motion?
Yes.
Councilor. Okay, thank you. So now, does everyone understand what perhaps the town attorney should restate the motion?
The motion is to deny the permit application for construction and tree removal because stormwater is not properly stored on site during a 1-year storm event as required by the town code. And the applicant has not met its burden to indicate hardship as to why tree number 2 must come down.
Okay, thank you. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I would just formally like to say that I'm going to oppose this motion because I do believe that the system they put in is the best possible way to manage water on that site and is consistent with our code as specified in code. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to add that I think it was good that we pushed back with the decision in the last hearing, but I'm not convinced that there can be any significant, interventions here beyond what they have proposed, and I suspect highly likely that there will be, reduction in runoff given just the facts in front of us. So, I'm going to struggle to approve this motion given my, approval of the previous motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion?
I'd like to say that, can I just say something?
Sure.
Discuss? I think this decision is really difficult. And part of it is because this permit application is not right for us. And we're always kicking the can down the lane and to do the right thing. And it's time for us to do the right thing. This house was not designed properly for this land. It may be difficult, but it's doable. It may have needed to be a smaller house. I'm not an architect, but it's doable. I know it's doable. When you look around this neighborhood, you can do it. And I think it's time for us to be clear about what we'll approve and what we won't. And that's all I got to say. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm only going to say that if you're trying to build any house on that lot, which has got not a very tricky hill because it's actually sloped in different ways on different parts of the lot and clay soil, to manage stormwater on the lot is extraordinarily difficult, no matter the size of the house you're building. So.
I mean, I agree with that about how difficult it would be on this lot, but I don't necessarily agree that, there aren't different choices that can be made as far as this driveway so that we can save these cherry trees that, are very important, and they're fine and healthy except for the one that's now ruined. And there's no reason for them to come down. I mean, they could do a side entrance, like, you can do a lot of different things with architecture that can allow a house to have a garage on that side.
You can do that. The issue is, and Mr. Conlon mentioned it, although technically it's a permeable paver that you put in, that doesn't really absorb a lot of the water when you've got clay soil underneath. I mean, you put some permeable stuff directly under it, but all that does is get soaked, and then you've got clay soil underneath and the water runs off the permeable paver. That's what happens. So the more of that you put in, the more runoff you're going to get regardless. And the best thing to do is to have the shortest driveway you can get in, because that then means there's the least runoff from it.
But then, I mean, also taking down trees that are mature trees.
It takes down a mature cherry tree, and in a sense, what you're doing is you're taking down the mature cherry tree to save a whole lot of stormwater running off the property permanently.
And I share your view, Shannon. It's difficult with the trees, but there they are, frankly, making a good faith effort, offering to plant a higher caliber. I agree with, I think, Julie Abrams' point that it's not the same, but I feel we are asking a lot of this applicant on this particular property. And
I mean, kind of yes and no. Like there's plenty of towns that don't really, that would just say no upwards. Like,
I think you've all made your point. Is there further discussion on the motion?
I want to add one point that I want to mention earlier, because we talked about this in our working session, the desirability of referencing the stormwater study that was conducted. And if you look at that study, you'll see that the 2 house lots south of 5506 Trent are color-coded red, indicating that those 2 houses suffer significant damage from stormwater. So it is a problem in this area. It's not just the water in the street. And this house design is a larger house than the house that it is proposed to replace.
Measures they've put in, those houses would be better protected.
I agree with the mayor. I think we should go for a vote.
Okay, thank you. Is there further?
There we go.
I think you're
Thank you all.
beginning to repeat yourself. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion?
This is my motion, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
I
Debbie.
see Serco, Heller, and Roback. All those opposed.
I'm not sure whose motion it is anymore.
I see Barr and Kumar. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. The next item is the building administrator's report. Mr. Lohmeyer.
A few items at 4519 Cumberland. The town's building permit is scheduled to expire on April 21st. And the contractors told me that they plan on completing the job this month. And somebody should be moving in shortly. At 4816 Essex, the staff's been talking to a contractor about making an addition to the existing house, but no plans have been submitted to the county or the town yet. At 5502 Greystone, same thing. We've been talking to a contractor, but no plans have been submitted. And also the same thing applies to 5613 Warwick. We've been meeting with a contractor about making improvements to the addition house, but no plans have been submitted. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Council President Serco, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Council Member Barr.
Yeah, it's just which is the house on Warwick that the last one you mentioned? I read it, it said 5616 and there is no 5616 house on Warwick. So what is the house number really?
Yes, I'm sorry, it is 5613.
It's 5613, thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Heller.
I'm sorry, I stepped away, so I don't have any questions. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Kumar.
None, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rovak.
So as part of 4519 Cumberland's building permit, the town council voted to approve with the condition that they would be seeking help from a landscape architect who would look at other things that can be done in order to limit runoff and extra water that's come through. And so I wanted to know, how does that work in terms of like, what do they actually have to prove or show that they got approved for this permit?
I can answer that, Doug. The applicant followed up and sent us a certified letter from a company that said that they had consulted with them and made the recommendation to plant the trees in the rear yard.
But weren't those trees already a condition for taking down trees?
I think they had consulted with them about the species of tree.
So there's like definitely much more other things that they could do, like plant shrubs and by the attenuation device and hold back some of this water. So is it just they get to go to any consultation place that writes them a letter and says that, and then that's okay?
Yeah, the town attorney might be able to speak to this, but there's always the question of permit, conditions of a permit versus a conditional permit. In other words, the permit was approved on the condition that they consulted with a specialist on this, not that they implement any unspecified conditions that a specialist might recommend, or that there was a specific specialist that they did have to consult with.
So they really don't have to, I mean, so that's really important for us as a town council to understand, like when we're putting in these conditions, like they mean nothing unless, you actually have like a real plan in place. Like it was just to appease the neighbor who, was bitching, but, it doesn't mean anything for these developers, and they don't have to do anything, and they haven't slowed any runoff. They haven't planted any plantings. They're not going to. And, I think that it's important for us all to understand like what happens on the back end of these permits.
Okay, so I think that's a very good question, and I think it could be discussed at a future work session. And I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wonder if we could use some of the public nuisance language that our town attorney mentioned earlier. But yeah, we'll make it a work session topic.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Rovak, did you have any further questions of the engineer?
Nope.
Thank you. All right, we will go to the next item, which is public hearing motion to approve of the expenditure of $15,000 for the early opening of the town pool with an opening date of Friday, May 6th, as recommended by the town pool committee. Mr. Town Manager, would you present this, please?
Yeah, and before I get into it, I do want to clarify, because Councilmember Barr had mentioned to me that, to clarify that the pool committee had recommended an earlier pool opening, not this specific proposal. So this is more of a follow-up that the council had asked for the staff to look into in response to another proposal from the pool committee that was denied at that time. So the American Pool, so the town's management partner, offered to open the pool early for a cost of a little over $10,000. The utility costs are a rough estimate, in part because the biggest driver of utility costs is gas, which is how the pool is heated. So it's very weather dependent, but wanted to be conservative in budgeting and make sure that we didn't go over it. And so since even though it's really only 2 weeks that we're talking about here, because the pool is scheduled to open on Saturday, excuse me. I also realized that I had messed up the calendar. Yeah, I'm
21st.
sorry,
May
Friday,
21st.
May 20th. So this would just push the opening 2 additional weeks back. And I think $15,000 would cover that cost, the management and all associated costs related to utilities and whatnot. And in order to do that, the town's budget does need to be amended. And I identified 2 options for the town council to take those funds from. One is that the town does build in a separate budget contingency line in its budget, which the primary purpose for is for unexpected or unanticipated costs. And the second would be that we do have money left over for snow removal. One future topic that we might discuss is perhaps a special fund for snow removal, but at the moment, we do the same thing. We employ very conservative budgeting for snow removal so that hopefully we never have to go back and amend our budget barring a real major storm event like we had a few years ago. But even in that case, we were able to go back, get FEMA money to reimburse ourselves. So the money is there in either of those 2 pools for the council to consider. I did include for you all the survey results. I put out one final reminder this weekend.
It was not a survey.
I'm sorry, a poll of.
It was not a poll. It was the encouragement of comments on the item. So it's not a poll or not a survey.
We set up a place where residents could make specific comments specific to this agenda topic. And we received 185 responses actually from residents. 185 what I'm calling valid responses. So in other words, that's where a resident left a comment that was discernible and or not a duplicate. There are a handful of ones where a resident just logged in and perhaps didn't completely understand how it worked, and so left it blank, and so didn't count those ones. But of those 185, 51%, 94% of those who chimed in indicated that they were in favor. 38% or 70 of them said they were against an early opening. And 11% or 22 residents were in the other category. So they were ambivalent or had a few had an alternate suggestion that maybe we do just 1 week early instead of 2. I went back and checked, and of those responses, a few were from the same household. So depending on how you look at it, 11 responses were from households who had members who voted twice. 5 were from households who voted twice against it. And a small number actually had differing opinions in their household. We had one family in particular that one was in favor and the other was against it. So just for transparency purposes and to give you all as much information as possible as you consider it, not saying one set of statistics is more valid than the other, but not counting those stacked submissions from households, there were 169 responses, which is pretty great. We got a large number of residents weighing in on this issue. 49% were in favor, 38% were against, and 12% were ambivalent or as I said before, had an alternate suggestion. That's kind of what I have out there. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
And for the record, each response was submitted to the council members, right?
That's right. Yes, that was included for you all in the council packet.
And for the council's consideration, so should you vote in favor of this expenditure, you will have to make a second vote on transferring the money, the funds.
Yeah, I think, and maybe the town attorney can clarify, but I believe we need a super majority to amend the budget to transfer the $15,000 from one of the funds.
So well, when we get to that, we'll go over that again. Council President Circo, do you have any questions?
No, I just want to say thank you for conducting this outreach with the town. It's useful to get the information, get the feedback from residents.
Thank you. Councilor Barr, do you have any questions?
No questions at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Heller.
Did you use my numbers or yours? Did you add, I did this count yesterday. I did spend all afternoon. And I just wondered how you did your numbers versus mine.
Those were my numbers. The way I tried to do it, and it's a fair question to question my methodology, but I basically just went in and put a tick mark either for, against, or other, depending on the column, and then added up the number of tick marks. So
I think my numbers are different than yours because I took out all the duplicates.
Gotcha.
Why don't you explain? Why don't you share your information?
Well, my information was that 176 households.
Oh, I'm sorry, Debbie, but I'm sorry to cut you off, but I will also note that we did have
more today,
a fair number of residents that actually submitted something over the weekend and even this morning.
Okay. Well, then that kind of takes away my numbers, except that I did pull out duplicates. And I will tell you, just from what I did, 27 of them were duplicates. Okay. 27 were duplicates and 19 submissions were not clear. But I listed in my notes to everybody what everybody said. I didn't discard them. I just, because they were things like open a week early, or no comment, or I'll go with the flow. That kind of thing, what about our contingency fund, things like that. But so I just wondered where your numbers come from compared to my numbers. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kumar.
No question, just thanks to Matt and to Debbie, and Matt especially for all the effort in laying this out clearly for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Rovak, do you have any questions of Matt?
So I just had a question, so for that snow removal money that we have set aside, if we don't spend that, where does it go into then?
In general, that it just means that it's money that would otherwise go into our reserves.
Okay.
And so we have essentially two reserve pools. We have one which is we're slowly building up a rainy day fund per a resolution that was made. Robin, correct me if I'm wrong here. I know you were sort of the architect of it, but 10 years or so ago, I believe.
2011.
And then the other is just unencumbered reserves that are just sort of extra money that rolls over year to year, can be used on various projects, and is a cushion.
Okay, I have nothing further. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest indicated they wish to speak?
Yes, we have the pool committee chair, Mr. Matt Zaft here, joined us.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
It's hard for me to see the buttons. Matthew Zaft, Dorset Avenue, Pool Committee Chair. Just a couple of quick things that I want to point out. One, and I do think that this is something that maybe should be addressed at a future meeting or council discussion, but The quote unquote normal opening of the pool is not a set date, but rather a set weekend. It is the weekend before Memorial Day weekend. And as we all know, that changes every year. So whereas this year Memorial Day falls on the 30th, and so the normal opening would be the 20th, in majority of years, it actually is much earlier. And which is why the normal opening, if you look back on the history of the pool, is usually around the 16th or 17th. So just one thing I would sort of throw out there is that possibly we might want to, in the future, have a date rather than a weekend. But regardless, that if we say open on the 6th, we're actually might be only opening a week to a week and a half earlier than plenty of other years. That's one. Two, in regards to the feedback form, what is not a survey and not an empirical study of any way, shape, or form, I would argue with the idea of throwing out duplicate response only from the standpoint of, I would say, when we have a town election, both my wife and I get a vote. Both my wife and I are employed. We both pay taxes. So therefore, I would think that we should both count in any sort of feedback, especially as Matt alluded to in the households, though I certainly hope this was not the case in my household, but in the households where we have differing opinions. So I would push back on the argument of throwing out duplicates, only because I feel like anyone who pays taxes, anyone who is a resident should have an equal say, regardless of household. I would also, once again, reiterate that this was a unanimous recommendation from the pool committee. As it was alluded to, we did recommend an earlier opening. However, at the most recent meeting, we reaffirmed we would approve any earlier opening. So whatever the council felt was appropriate, anything earlier would be acceptable. So it's not like, oh, if it wasn't so much earlier, we wouldn't take it. We just want the pool open as soon as you all will let it. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has anyone else indicated they wish to speak?
Not this evening, but as you said, Mr. Mayor, the over 150 responses were also included for the council ahead of the meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you. Council, are you prepared to make a motion?
I am. Should I go ahead?
Sure.
Do we want to, okay. Motion to approve, sorry, fading right now. Approve the expenditure of $15,000 for the early opening of the town pool with an opening date of Friday, May 6th, as recommended by the town pool committee.
So, Mr. Town Attorney, does that need to include the transfer of the funds, and will this then require 4 council members to vote for it?
Yes, yeah, Mr. Mayor. And it could be made one motion because you wouldn't want to approve the action without the appropriation, because I mean, unlikely that you have a different result, but.
So that's up to you. So Councilmember Kumar.
I can do that. So let me try that again. So to approve the expenditure of $15,000 for the early opening of the town pool with an opening date of Friday, May 6th, as recommended by the town pool committee, and transfer of funds from the snow removal and or the contingency fund line items. Is that does that suffice?
Yes.
Of the fiscal year 22 budget.
So
is there a second?
I'll second that. I would also favor the snow removal budget because there's still quite a lot left in the snow removal budget when we take $15,000 out.
Okay, so now discussion on the motion, and remember that this motion requires 4 council members to vote for it in order for it to pass. So is there discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I support it for this year, but it really depends upon how much money is in the kitty, and we happen to have a good reserve in the snow removal budget at the moment, and therefore we can do this, but it's not going to necessarily be true next year.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think we need to look at, also in keeping with what Matt Zaff was saying, sort of what are the full operating dates of our pool in total. And I think we can do that as part of our next budget process, be very clear. I think Shannon made a very compelling case of the declining temperatures past a certain point. And so we should look at the full sort of opening and closing of the pool. It'd be great to create a standard for subsequent years.
Is there further discussion? I think Council
Yes.
President Zerko wanted to say
I have
something.
things to say.
Okay, go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, you want to go first, Steve? No,
Well,
Go ahead.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'll just, first off, I want to thank you also. I mentioned Matt, but appreciate you getting directly involved in outreach to the community to get more feedback. The thoughts I want to share, I don't necessarily have a hard opinion here, but I find the feedback from the town is very mixed here. It's almost 50-50 for versus against or ambivalent, with a fairly good representation or number of responses. And I'm concerned about the town's budget. I guess that's just sort of a general perspective I take. And it's my understanding that, right, we might have some excess money from the snow removal line, but the last I saw of the town budget, we were actually operating in the negative through this part of the fiscal year. And the budget committee has told us that they're looking at recommending an increase in our property real estate tax in the near future. So I'm concerned about the finances. I guess where I'm coming out is I might be willing to support a 1 week early, but I'm concerned about my angst increases at 2 weeks. Those are just my thoughts.
Well,
Debbie?
that's what's on the motion
I
is
realize.
for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So Councilmember Heller, you wanted to comment on the motion.
I wanted to talk, I have a couple of points to talk about. One is, one of the things that the pool committee could not look at when they had their meeting was the actual usage numbers from last May. And we have them, and our numbers are low in terms of actual people using it. We could drill down further, and Shannon did a little bit of drilling down further to see that even on the low usage day, it was very few households. If we look at it, is how many people are using the pool, how many households, because it's the households that fuel our taxes. I have actual numbers if you want to hear them.
Yes, please.
You want to hear them?
Yeah, well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes.
Yes, okay. So if you look at May 9th of last year, and that was, no, I don't have 9th. Wait a second. Shannon, do you have the list in front of you? Because I've lost my
Yeah,
other list.
I have it. I can share my screen if you guys would like to.
Yeah, that'd
see.
be great. The list of per day, how many people went to the pool in May.
Can you guys see it?
Not yet.
Coming soon.
Here we are.
That's so weird. It's not.
Well, it's not,
It's up now.
it's not in order, unfortunately. But if you take a look at the lower numbers, remember, we opened last year on May 21st, May 22nd, okay? So if
No,
you
we
look at,
didn't.
No, we didn't.
So we opened on Saturday, May 8th, which is this.
oh,
date
right, I'm sorry, Saturday, May 8th.
So on Saturday, May 8th, there were 16 instances of people that went to the pool. Of that, there were 11 households with 16 people. You can see here is Sunday, May 9th at 24, Monday, May 10th at 25, The 11th is at 18, and wait, 11th, what comes, 12th is at 23. So they're all hovering down in here. Now, my understanding is that there was like a weird thing where people had to pay for it or something like that. And it was like pay to do laps, or, so that definitely could have impacted this. I think that there's definitely, so if the pool is supposed to be opening on Saturday, May 21st, you can see like these numbers are instances, and they definitely increase, as you go along. I mean, it might be interesting, I know it's not the motion, but to explore, Steve's idea of just 1 week later and starting like, not the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, but like more like around the 15th.
Well, you're welcome to propose an amendment.
Before we do that, and I'm fine if somebody wants to make that budget amendment, but I would just like to finish what I wanted to say once you saw these numbers.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to really get you to think about money, and that just because we have extra money, like in snow shoveling, doesn't mean we should spend it. It's not like we need to think about and be fiscally responsible to our residents, and to make sure that we use the money wisely. And I'm not sure that opening up the pool 2 weeks early is wise, because it could be cold and chilly. It could be raining. Now, it could rain anytime, I know that. But I think opening this pool earlier in the month is a silly idea. And I think it's a waste of money. And I don't think we are doing our best to be fiscally responsible. And so, and that's really what I mostly wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, and I'd like to say something. Shannon, would it be possible to unshare? Because then I can see everyone. I don't have everyone's window in front of me.
There we are.
Look, I strongly believe, as I've said before, that the pool is more than the pool. It is a place for our community to gather. I think we should spend on ways to get our community together. I think it's the kind of thing we should prioritize. It's not, we have a budget, we spend on things. This is one of the things that I would always advocate that we consider as important, because it brings us together. It just happens to be that this pool at least existed before I showed up. I think many of you showed up. And it is one of those things that exists in our town that creates an opportunity for us to congregate. I think if we open it earlier, it will create more opportunities for people to congregate. I see those numbers as people congregating. I see them congregating from last year at a time when we were in the middle of a pandemic. Scenario is very different right now. And so I feel, just delighted at the prospect that even 5 people showed up to congregate at the pool. And so I know that that's not, I don't know what the cutoff is, what's reasonable, but I feel delighted at the prospect that we made that happen. And so that's my starting point. Secondly, I think on the budget and being fiscally responsible, we have to look at the total budget. This would be my first opportunity, as for a number of the new council members, to do that as part of the budget process. I did not have that opportunity, previously. And so I want us to look at the whole budget. I want us to look at our operating expenses in total. 45% of our budget typically is personnel and professional services. We need to look at every aspect of our budget. And I think all of us are aligned on that front. And I'm looking forward to doing that in the coming month. But I would definitely not deprioritize something that creates an opportunity for our community to get together.
You'll have time to talk about all that starting on Wednesday, but tonight it's regarding this year's budget.
Yeah, and so that's exactly my point. And so and the last thing I would say is that I appreciate that, I'm always of the view that we have created this committee structure. We have created a process in which we are soliciting suggestions and ideas from town residents in a formalized format. I think it's a great thing that we've done. It is an extraordinary level of civic participation that we have. And I'm always of the view that we should think hard and prioritize what committees are requesting us to do. And in this case, this outcome that we are considering came out of a proposal from one such committee. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I see Barr, Kumar, and Rovak. All those opposed? I see Circo and Heller. So given that that motion required 4 votes, the motion fails. Is anyone prepared to make an alternative motion?
I propose that we open 1 week early. Yes, that would be Friday, the May 13th. Let me look at my Friday, May 13th.
I second.
Hold on a second. I think you need to include in that motion the dollar amount.
Oh, and that would probably be at
Mr. Town Manager,
less
can
than
you
half.
estimate?
Yeah, I would estimate about, well, I mean, it would be half of that, probably a little less than half of that, but yeah, I'd say.
So why don't you say the cost
$7,500
not
to be
to
safe.
exceed?
Not to exceed $8,000.
Okay, and so Councilor Rovak, you accept, you second
Second.
that motion, correct? Is there
Yeah.
discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think that passed unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is, well, let me ask the town attorney. So it's understood how the money is going to be transferred.
From the snow removal budget.
Yeah, we assume that was your intent, Mr. President. The next item, public hearing motion to approve of the expenditure of $8,539.60 to Electech to provide election counting and management services as recommended by the town's Board of Supervisors of Elections. I will ask the town manager to begin this.
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it short before I turn it over to the Board of Supervisors of Election Chair, who I believe is with us this evening. But the only point I'll make before I turn it over to her is that last year we had adopted rules that indicated that if we had an uncontested election, that we could, in essence, cancel the actual voting process under the emergency order of the governor's COVID-19 order. And that's the important aspect of it, is that the government had an emergency order in place because of COVID-19. And so that is no longer an option to us. And so our town charter does provide for an election day that the Board of Supervisors of Elections sets. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Chair Bindaman Khan to introduce both the board's recommended election procedures as well as a contract with a election election management provider.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, the two are closely related, the expenditure for Electech and our proposed plan for the 2022 election. And we're in an interesting spot here because Maryland law requires mail-in, that any municipality provide for mail-in voting in any election. The way it's written in our town charter, it's only on an absentee basis and you have to give grounds, but that's basically unenforceable. We are bound by Maryland law. And for the past 2 years, because of the pandemic and the state of emergency, we have had elections with ballots mailed by Electech. Now that we are required to do that, the Board of Supervisors of Elections determined that it makes a lot of sense to have Electech continue to run those, to mail the ballots, because they keep track of it in a way that is systematic, and it would, it's really we think it's essential to have an outside provider mail the ballots, receive them, and process them. We also, though, we are not in a state of emergency and hope that we won't be in May. And therefore, we are not canceling the in-person election. We have no authority to do that or even to recommend to the council that that be done. And so we don't believe that we can cancel the election even if it's uncontested. That was only because of the state of emergency. Just for your information, the Board of Elections is going to go through the entire town charter, all of the provisions relating to elections, which my guess is haven't been amended in a very long time. And we're going to make some recommendations in the coming months about ways that we might suggest that the council amend those provisions, but we couldn't do it in time for this year's election. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but
so let me ask you a question,
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Are
Yeah.
you presenting both the expenditure and the approval of the 2022 election procedures?
Yes, as I said,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
just, closely.
Okay, wonderful. So does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, well, the only other thing I was going to say is that if you look at our plan, the date of election is a little later than it used to be, but that is to accommodate the mail-in process and to give Electech time to receive the list of nominations, prepare the ballots. And we do need, well, no matter what the date is, we do need by the charter, the town council approval of the date that we're proposing for the election.
Okay, thank you. Council President Circa, do you have any questions?
Yes, please. First off, thank you and the committee for pulling this recommendation together, assessing the various regulations affecting our town. I'm trying to understand the cost for Electech. If everyone in the town votes in person, do we still pay Electech $8,500?
Yes, I mean, I can actually refer any questions regarding the specific amount to the town manager, who I think has gotten the proposal for this year. But yes, because you have to mail them out, but.
Yeah, just to quickly elaborate, and feel free to cut me off, Steve, if your question has been answered, but the Electech had indicated that printing prices have gone up by about 33% over last year, which is why last year it was in the $6,000 neighborhood. This year it's $8,500 or so. Those were the quoted prices last year. The service that they're providing is both to mail out ballots to residents and then also to collect ballots and tabulate ballots.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Barr, do you have any questions?
No, just no, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Heller.
No, I don't. Thanks, Sherry, for all of that.
Thank you. Councilmember Kumar.
Thank you, Sherry. I have two questions. In the procedures, do you need to specify, who can be nominated, sort of eligibility to be nominated? Because I don't believe that's.
You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted.
All right, that is in the charter. It's restated.
In the charter.
I believe it's restated in our plan, but it is that's in the charter. We're not.
I only asked. I only asked because in the who can vote you specify. So I think that's also in the charter, if I'm not mistaken. So I wondered if there was a reason why that was included in the process. But anyway, if it's in the charter. And then my second question is, we have this proposal that's been going around for changing the voting age to 16. We approved these procedures today, so you can kind of get on with the business of organizing the election. I'm just wondering, and maybe this is a question to the town attorney, what's our ability to then revisit the voting age as part of the current election?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear what your question was about the voting age.
It's about the voting age.
What's the?
It's about the voting age. I'm saying we approved this these procedures today so that you can go on with sort of procedurally organizing the election. But we also approving the voting age as it is in the code, in the charter. What is our ability to revisit that voting age as part of the current upcoming election?
I think
And I
the
was
town
saying
attorney
it's possibly a question to the attorney.
Yeah, I can jump in if that's all right, Chair Benedict.
Absolutely.
So that would require a change to the charter. And as the mayor noted, there's probably not time because charter amendments take at least 3 months.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sherry and Ron.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Rovak. Do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest indicated they wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Vaswani.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair.
Thank you, Kumar Vaswani, Trent Street. I'm just wondering if you're allowing enough time for ballots to be mailed out and for voters to receive them. Looks like you're going to mail them out on May 3rd, and voters have to mail them back so that they're postmarked by May 17th, which is only 2 weeks. And I can see all kinds of problems arising given the problems with the post office. If the voter doesn't receive the ballot, they'll have to contact you and request a new one. So that will consume time. And really, there's only a 2-week window there for voters to mail back the ballots.
Well, a couple of things in response to that. This is the same timeline we've had for the last 2 years. Although last year, because the election was uncontested, we ended up not proceeding and also not incurring the expense. But it did work the year before. And although their residents are required to, the ballots are required to be postmarked by May 17th, they still have an additional week. The Electech doesn't need to receive them until May 24th. And so we're allowing an entire week after the date of mailing. If someone doesn't get the ballot or there's a problem, first of all, they can go to town hall and vote in person on May 24th. But also they can, if they don't receive the ballot we have it spelled out here. I think it's May
17th.
May 17th, then they can notify town hall and we will have additional ballots and notify Electech so there won't be duplication. But that's one of the reasons, one of the benefits in using a provider like Electech, because they can keep track clearly of what ballots have been sent. And so I mean, anything can happen, but we think that this is these are safe windows. And we have in the past talked to the Electech people to make sure that we were allowing enough time.
Okay.
Did
Well,
you have
my
any other
only,
questions? Did you have
sorry,
any
but my
questions?
only, I guess my response to that is the problems with the post office have been increasing. So it might have worked 2 years ago. It might not work out as well this year, but let's just hope it works. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, and we can encourage people to drop their ballots off if they have any question at all, if they can't get it early, because if they receive them by the 17th, now I do think that Electech will be mailing them on May 3rd. So, presumably, if things go well, most people will receive it within 4 or 5 days after that. But it's a point well taken. And because of the uncertainties, we can encourage people to drop their ballots off at town hall also.
And I might just add very quickly, just logistically, we will have to keep some extra ballots at the town hall so that we can physically drop them off, just given that people can vote through May 17th, but they have through close of business on May 17th to request another ballot as well. So just wanted to point that out.
Do Is that all
And
your
what
question?
we were trying to do here is the other thing that is that controls some of this is that the by the town charter, the nominations are taken at the town meeting, which is at the April town council meeting. And then there's an additional 2 weeks where people can, or maybe longer than that, where people can submit petition nominations by petition. And so a lot of this is also guided by and the requirements of the charter and the dates specified in the charter.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Did anyone else indicate they wish to speak?
There are no other comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Council, are you prepared to make a motion?
I can make a
Remember, it's
motion.
combining these two items.
I can make a motion. Motion to approve the 2022 election procedures as recommended by the town's Board of Supervisors of Elections, and to approve expenditure of $8,539.60 to Elect Tech to provide election counting and management services.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? I saw Bar first. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Heller, did you vote?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
I think everyone voted
I'm
yes.
sure I
Thank
voted.
you. And thank you very much to
Tired.
the incredible chair of the Board of Supervisors of Elections under challenging times with an outdated charter and what have you. But I'm so happy. I know the council is very pleased that you will be reviewing all of these outdated provisions and coming up with some recommendations so we can move into the 21st century.
But we want to keep that small town feel. So that's another
Correct.
consideration.
Correct.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
The next item is, it's not a public hearing. It's a motion to introduce ordinance 1221-2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 182 of the Somerset Code of Ordinances to amend tree removal application requirements, amend the criteria for permit decisions, and add permit conditions. Mr. Town Manager.
Yes.
Is this to adopt or introduce?
I was going to
So this
say,
is
I
the
think
introduction.
I think I made an error when
It's to
I
adopt.
made this, because this was introduced at our February,
Oh, okay.
our February our January work session, which did not allow us enough time to adopt in February. But now we've made that budget. So I apologize for that.
Let me ask the town attorney. Is that a problem that the agenda says introduction, not to consider? And does that mean that citizens of Somerset did not have the knowledge that this was being voted on tonight?
Well, Mayor, I think it would be okay because the agenda does say public hearing motion. So, those that wanted to comment did have the opportunity to comment tonight. But, it's up to the council whether they want to delay it another month.
Well,
I did
in fact,
write an article in
Hold
Town
on,
Journal.
hold on, council member. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Town Attorney. So that can be part of your
That was it, Mr.
question.
Mayor.
That can be part of your questions when we run through the Council President Circa. Do you have any questions?
No questions. I think we can consider it.
Okay, fine. Council Member Barr.
No questions. I did publish an article in the Town Journal on this one, so the town has been notified, and notified also that we were going to be voting on it.
Oh, excellent.
And so if that's the case, then I would rule I would rule that we're that the agenda item is, and considering the fact that the mayor sets the agenda. So I would like for the record to state that this is a public hearing motion to approve ordinance 1221-2 based on that information. Council Member Heller, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kumar now.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Rovak.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest indicated they wish to speak on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Council, are you prepared to make a motion?
Robin?
Yes, I move that we adopt the ordinance to amend Chapter 182 of the Somerset Code of Ordinances to amend tree removal application requirements, amend the criteria for permit decisions, and add permit conditions.
Second.
I see Councilor Kumar seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think everybody voted yes. Thank you very much. The next item, public hearing motion to approve a resolution to edit the established procurement policy, which clarifies equal opportunity requirements. Mr. Town Manager.
If you'll recall at our last meeting, our public safety chair noted one section of the procurement policy which might cause some legal difficulties, and so we've just slightly amended it. I think practically it doesn't really affect the way it would be administered, but here it is before you.
Okay, thank you. Council President Sturko, do you have any questions?
No questions. I'm just very pleased we're getting to this point.
Thank you. Councilor Barr.
No questions.
Councilor Heller.
No questions.
Councilor Kumar.
None.
Councilor Rovak.
No questions.
Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest indicated they wish to speak on this?
Not tonight.
Council, are you prepared to make a motion?
I move we adopt the procurement policy as modified.
Thank you. Is there a second? I saw Sturko. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much. And our last item is our manager's report, our town manager's report.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I just thank you all. I think number one for your stamina and your commitment to the town and all the meetings between the council meetings and the work sessions and the budget meetings and the committee meetings, and sort of leads me to my first item, which is that the archival project is wrapping up. We're at the stage now where the Maryland State Archives has picked up all of our old boxes, and so now they'll begin filing them and scanning them for us. One of the last items that we had was to set up a meeting with you all to get just a short presentation from Donna Cawley, who was our kind of project manager on that special project. As you all know, we'll have a budget meeting starting on Wednesday. I will send around the first draft of the mayor's budget for discussion tomorrow morning, so you at least have 24 hours to review it. And the budget chair has put together some really great talking points, which I think will help understand at a high level. I'm also working on a couple of documents that might help highlight some of the areas where you might have questions, as well as some of the significant changes, and also just help you understand our budget since it is rather large in general. One item that I would like for us to consider is at next week's work session, if we could perhaps have a short council meeting to consider an item. I met with an electrician as well as somebody from American Pool last week about our pool pump room situation. You might recall that last year we'd heard that perhaps converting to phase 3 might make sense because our pump worked on that, and that may have had something to do with our pump issues. And after some discussions, the long and short of it is I don't think it's necessary for us to actually convert the town pool to phase 3. All of our equipment, all of our everything is actually on single phase electricity, except for a pump. So if we switch to phase 3, we'd just be doing the same thing, but converting everything else to single phase. What we're going to do instead, or what we're proposing to do, is actually instead of one large 15, forgive me, it's late, so now I'm forgetting the vernacular, if it's volt or watt or whatever, but the pump, instead of one 15 volt pump, it'll be two 7.5 volt pumps. And then we'll also be able to have one in storage as well. So if for whatever reason it needs to be replaced, we can easily.
Okay, I'm trying to get.
Sorry, I'm getting too much.
So
in
the
the
whole
weeds.
issue is just that we're going to have a brief council session.
Yeah,
Next.
I apologize for getting too much in the weeds. Bottom line is we have a proposal, $44,000 to do that. They're able to do it, but time is sort of the essence in order to get it done before the pool opens. That's kind of the bottom line on that. I have had some back and forth with Pepco about streetlights, got a new and updated Kabir and Robin. I think I'd emailed you last week. It's sort of with exclamation points saying, oh my goodness, why is this the case? And then got a response back on Friday that said, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong numbers. And so it would actually be less than $1,000 per light. So we're in good shape there, and actually pretty good budgeted numbers on that. I just because of the late hour, I'm going to leave it there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and also if folks want to follow up with me afterwards, I'm happy to as well.
I wanted to add. Remember, man, I wanted to add.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So,
I'm sorry.
So, in addition to the approval of a contract for the electric work at the pool, per Council Member Heller's suggestion, we will also have on the agenda briefly approving a support for a capital expenditure regarding the park on Willard Avenue. And I will send all the information, but this is something that's been recommended by the Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights, of which we are a member. And I have checked with our council member, our county council member Friedson, and he would appreciate our town council weighing in, so that will also be on there. And the second item that we will need to, actually there's a third one, which is the which is the support of that proposal regarding River Road and Thrive. So that's also going to be on the agenda we're going to put that on the agenda for the brief council meeting next Monday. That's all I wanted to say. Council President Circo, do you have any questions?
Well, just one on the River Road and Thrive. I thought that was on our consent agenda tonight. I think we've already signed.
Yeah, we already signed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I think there's another
something else.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
there.
we're in agreement.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I forgot. So yes, there'll only be one additional item on there. Is that your only question?
That was it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Barr.
No questions.
Councilmember Heller.
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Kumar.
Matt, thanks a lot for everything. Just a quick thing to my fellow council members. I think tomorrow when Matt sends out the stuff from Phil, please do take the moment to read his talking points prior to our work session. And we will, I think, go line by line through the budget, but it would really, starting with the first session, but it would really help if you read his talking points as backdrop to get our conversation going.
That's great. Will do. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Councilor Rovak, last word.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. So we will see everyone on Wednesday at 5:30.
Right.
We will see everybody next Monday for the work session at 5:30. And we will see everybody on the 17th for the second budget hearing, if you're able to attend. But remember, it's going to be recorded. And in addition, per Councilmember Kumar's suggestion, that if at any time you have any questions about something on the budget, feel free to call Matt. And we go over it line by line. So if you happen to miss one of the meetings, it's not going to be the end of the world. So thanks a lot. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good
Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.